Did she say what kind of animal it was that attacked her?
So yeah, they're saying it's some type of animal attack. Statistically, there's been more animal attacks, mysterious deaths, people gone missing.
In other news, local authorities remain perplexed by the animal attacks.
What attacked you in the woods?
An animal. What else could it have been?
Welcome to It Was an Animal Attack, home of the supernatural drama series. I'm Sandile.
And I'm Fadzai.
And we're back to talk about lesser referenced character, but I think still somewhat iconic, the huntress Rayna Cruz. Late entry in the Vampire Diaries all the way in season 7. And I thought, hey, season 7's kind of a blind spot. Let's go back and have a look at what the hell's going on there. And who else best to discuss that whole shebang than the primary antagonist of the season.
I wonder how many of our listeners who were Vampire Diaries fans stuck around for that long.
Yeah, what are the chances that people just don't know who we're even talking about? Ooh, that raises concerns about the Siren episode we put out last year, but what are you gonna do? Just before we jump in, a note from the last episode, our Gilbert Journal on werewolves. I spend a significant amount of time somewhere in the middle talking about something called ancestral DNA. After just like the smallest amount of research, immediately found that's not what it's called. The thing I was talking about is genetic memory. That is the proper term. And this is what happens when you try and sit and speak anecdotally about epigenetics, a thing that people spend years and years studying to like know things about. It's called genetic memory. It is an area of study, and like there's tons of papers about it. And I think in psychology too, people are trying to look at that in people in terms of how our bodies manifest trauma and deal with like social pressures that influenced generations coming down. So, you know, interesting stuff. Look it up if you're interested, but that's what it's called.
I usually see that kind of stuff in like fantasy or science fiction works. I think I had an example in mind, but I don't want to invoke a certain author, so I won't go there. But let's just say there's a story where a certain type of magical animal monster is instinctively terrified of another worse magical monster, even though they have never met it. And it's like, oh, every member of our species and even cousin species are all terrified of this monster. And it's like, oh, that feels like genetic memory because none of them have ever met this monster. They just seem to automatically know that, ooh, it's a big no-no.
Yeah, that is definitely a thing that you find in animals. Again, not something I know about in any study capacity, so I should not be speaking confidently on it, but look it up, do your own research, have a fun time with it. I don't know if you have anything to mention or correct from last week.
No, I was just going to say, fun fact about the genetic memory. I assume that's how Judeo-Christians who take the Bible very literally would be like, that's why humans don't like snakes, because of the Garden of Eden.
Oh, God. No, I think we grew up learning pretty early that snakes can be dangerous, so keep away.
Also, they're kind of just creepy. I think there's something about them, like this limbless creature. I think they might be really the only terrestrial vertebrate with no limbs. And I think for humans, it's just like, what is this thing? This is not normal.
Yeah, they used to creep me out, but I've come around on them. Now that when I found out that there were people who like snakes, and you see like snake carriers and snake holders who actually like and interact with the snakes, I'm like, okay, I kind of see the vibe. You know, they got that little tongue. It's kind of cool. Like, I get it.
A little tongue.
But we're not here to talk about snakes today. We're here to talk about another hunter.
Flawless segue. I love it.
That's terrible and I hate it, but here we are. So, Season 7 of the Vampire Diaries, right? Like we say, kind of a Wild West for this show. When you think about, at least when I think about Season 7, the only gems when you kind of sift through the dust and dirt of this like gold rush bank is like Lily and the Heretics. It's like, yeah, that's kind of interesting. And then it's Rayna Cruz, who's like, not the most exciting antagonist, but like mechanically and story-wise, she is very cool.
Yeah.
And then it's just all muck, right? It's Julian. It's the 3-year time jump. It's Enzo and the Armory. Matt has a storyline that's mostly an inconvenience.
Yes.
It's the fact that Elena's gone now and the gap she's left in the script is being filled by Damon's self-indulgent spiral. It's just like nothing else about season 7 is really exciting or fun.
You get to enjoy your Steriline ship. So
yeah, that's fun. Steriline's taking off, but again, that's usually being hindered by one of these other things on the list. It's like, well, we'll get into it, but Damon's the reason that gets put on pause, and then it's the time jump, and then Steriline's off for a bit. So it's like, I don't even get to enjoy that.
Yeah.
It's a rough season. But yeah, just to sort of set it up, because we are kind of starting at the beginning. Lily Salvatore, the Salvatore brothers' mother, has set up in Mystic Falls with her heretic children, now free from the 1903 prison world that they were trapped in by the Gemini Coven. Alaric Saltzman, his wife Josette Laughlin, was murdered at their wedding by her twin brother Kai in an effort to kill her unborn twin children and preventing them from usurping his position as the coven leader. Also, Elena has been put in the Sleeping Beauty curse by Kai to spite Bonnie. So these are sort of the relevant things that we're starting the season off with. And I think before we get into Rayna, there are two MacGuffins, I guess you could say, that we need to chart the history of and bring them to present date. And the first of them is this mysterious stone called the Phoenix Stone. This first appears in the Eurotrip that Alaric is on with Damon and Bonnie. He's got this stone with him, and he's asking a bunch of psychics and other purveyors of the occult how it works. He's like secretly leaving Bonnie and Damon to their own devices and going to take care of this situation that he's got going on. Later, when they get back to Mystic Falls, from an interaction he has with this ME's assistant that he's paying off to keep Joe on ice, we learn that his goal is to try and use the stone somehow to bring her back to life. Around the same time, Lily Salvatore, who's working on fully reuniting her family, tells Enzo, her new Ben 10, that she's searching for something called the Phoenix Stone, which was in her possession at the time that the Gemini Coven grabbed her in the Heretics, and she lost track of it at that point. I believe she must have like thrown it into the waters, right? Because she says when she followed after it now, it was recovered by divers in the Atlantic Ocean and put on display in this New York museum that they're at now. But it's not at the museum anymore. So she asks Enzo to help her find it. As she's saying this, that back with Rick, who's now roping in Bonnie to help him figure out the stone and like actually use it properly, he explains that he stole it from the Maritime Museum in New York. He had been told by a friend of his from Duke University, his alma mater, that this thing is called the Phoenix Stone and it may have the power to resurrect the dead. Bonnie, naturally suspicious because one, the other side is gone at this point, completely demolished at the end of season 5. So it's like, where would Joe's soul even go? Either Oblivion or Peace are the two options. Well, they say Oblivion, but they don't know that Cade and his psychic hell are on the way. But we won't get into that. She is skeptical, and so she's like, okay, I'll inspect it with magic, see what the situation is. And she does, and she gets the most horrifying visions of people screaming and suffering and dying, and she immediately goes, this is the worst vibes I've ever felt from a magical object. You need to destroy this. Rick's like, yeah, sure, I guess I should destroy it, and then absolutely doesn't do that, which he's grieving, so, you know, I guess, can you really hold it against him? The answer is yes.
Yes.
But
after everything that
grace.
Alaric Saltzman, who entered this story as an adult, has been through, I would think
the brain is a bit more formed than that. These guys haven't reached the time jump and magically become 25, so what are you doing?
Yeah.
He does go to destroy it. He's about to drop it in this little beaker of hydrofluoric acid, and then he looks at like a picture of him and Joe and is like, God damn it.
Hydrofluoric or hydrochloric?
Hydrofluoric. I think hydrochloric isn't strong enough.
Oh.
God, now I've got to look it up. Making me question my chemistry.
No, maybe you're right. I mean, you know more chemistry than I do. We both did chemistry,
but I need to confirm now.
You did it well.
I know because I used to work at a refinery and HF was like the most dangerous part of our plant. To even step into the like demarcated area where that production was happening, you'd need to, one, have a signed permit, and two, we already wore PPE, like protective gear, like it's like a blue overall, a helmet, gloves, earplugs. You had to have this whole apparatus to even walk into that section. That's how dangerous it was.
Interesting. I didn't know they really use acid in refinery? What would you call it?
Yeah, refinery. So we'd usually have byproducts from the main thing we wanted, which was for fuel, to go make like bitumen or like lubrication oils or HF alkylation. Maybe HF was just like something they used in the process. Like, this is something we use to refine the product and it's dangerous. I can't remember. I was only there for 3 months.
I was thinking of, what does Critical Role make? Vox Machina during the Whitestone arc, at least in the series adaptation. I'm not sure about the actual stream, but there was like this acid refinery room for the Whitestone in question, whose name I've forgotten. It's been a while since I watched it.
Oh, Residuum.
There we go, Residuum. Yes. There was this Residuum refinery that used a very corrosive acid. So I was like, oh, cool. I didn't know that in real life that's something we do. We refine materials with acid. I'm just a humble thespian. I don't know the science.
Hey, I'm a failed engineer, so don't take my word for it either. But yeah, whatever acid it may be, Rick chooses not to drop the stone into it and keeps it instead, hoping he can figure out. I don't know what his hope was, because Bonnie clearly was like, absolutely not. But he keeps it. And the thing about him keeping it is that this continues to give Bonnie those visions. It actually messes her up when she's trying to revive Matt. For whatever other magical reason, she needed to like kill him and then revive him with magic. And she gets these visions, and 6 minutes go by without her even realizing it, and Matt almost dies. So yeah. Then, in an encounter with Oscar, one of the heretics that Damon, Bonnie, and Rick have tracked down, Oscar senses that they have the Phoenix Stone with them, and he knocks them all out using magic and snatches it, dips out. When they eventually track him down again, he warns them that anyone who has messed with this stone has ended up dead. And that's the first time outside of Bonnie that someone who actually knows what they're talking about is like, this is bad vibes. It does set the tone that like, this is probably not a good thing that you're working with. Regardless, I think they like lock up Oscar somewhere, and then Rick gets the stone back. And he presses Bonnie to do the resurrection. And then Damon, who then finds Oscar dead because he's been killed by Valerie in another scene. She's trying to prevent the return of Julian. Damon now needs Oscar brought back to life because he needs to exchange him with Lily for Elena's coffin. So, Bonnie, now being assaulted from all sides, like, bring these people back to life, like, no big. She's like, all right, I'm gonna experiment with the stone. She tries using it on Oscar, struggling to find the right spell, until eventually she looks at a book on shamanic oral traditions that is in Rick's possession, and she uses a spell from there, and this one seems to resurrect Oscar. Despite some concerning behavior, Damon spirits him away for the hostage exchange, and Rick rushes Bonnie to go resurrect Joe now. They go to the morgue where she's being kept because she only got one more day left. The Emmy's assistant is like, I can't keep her any longer. So Bonnie puts the stone on Joe, uses the same spell, and seems to resurrect her as well. Both, quote, Oscar and Joe kind of ride the wave of people like embracing their return. But after a bit, it's revealed that these are not, in fact, Oscar and Joe. It's Valerie who informs the Salvatore brothers that the Phoenix Stone doesn't just bring people back from the dead, it's a supernatural prison that holds the souls of very old vampires. So what they've done is implant one of those souls into each of their recently revived people. Real dark, real messed up.
You know what I wonder? What are the exact mechanics of taking these vampire souls out of the Phoenix Stone and putting them into a human corpse and a vampire corpse? Like, these are dead bodies. Like,
right.
What energy is then repairing the damage done to these bodies and bringing the bodies back to life?
So, I'll mention that in a bit because that is a very key detail.
Okay.
So Enzo corners Bonnie at the Heretic household. He's asking after the stone because, as you remember, Lily told him to go find it. She's busy trying to get through to, quote, Oscar, who's freaking out because he thinks she's trying to put him back inside the stone. He sees the stone and immediately goes, absolutely not, I'm not going back in there. This entity, this vampire soul who's possessing Oscar, realizes that in Oscar's body, he's got magic. And so he starts using it. And a fight ensues. Bonnie drops the stone, Enzo snatches it, and then after some back and forth, she chooses to leave it behind for her safety. After Enzo is forced to kill Oscar in a fight, he then gives the stone to Lily and the Heretics, who are immediately far more familiar with how it works. They know that you can reunite a vampire soul and should reunite a vampire soul with its own body. So the 3 remaining heretics, Mary Louise, Nora, and Beau, put the stone on the body of their now found family member, Julian, and do the spell to put his own soul, which is trapped in the stone, into his body. Over the way with, quote, Joe and Rick, Joe, who turns out to be Florence, a vampire from the mid to late 19th century. Very lovely woman, so sweet, so innocent. She has begun to deteriorate because unlike Oscar, quote Oscar, who was a vampire soul planted into a vampire body, Florence was a vampire soul put into Joe's body, which is not immortal and cannot withstand an immortal soul. And so Joe's body starts to break down. I believe they put a time limit of was it a week or was it 3 days?
I think it was about 3 days.
3 days that it's after this, she will not be able to keep going. So she dies a sad but peaceful death in the arms of a sobbing Rick, who's now losing his wife for a second time. And so, yeah, that's about as much of the Phoenix Stone as happens in the first arc of the season. The other item is the Phoenix Sword. Bonnie and Enzo, following this, who are thick as thieves now for whatever reason, are looking over Oscar's car and find this weapon. It's a short sword with a blade that's X-shaped. It's 2 blades crossed at the center, and so it forms an X if you were to stab something with it. Bonnie says she recognizes it from some of the books she's been studying while trying to understand this Phoenix Stone better. And she says that the stone is supposed to go into the socket that's in the hilt of this sword. Enzo becomes convinced that this is a weapon that's certain to kill Julian because he at the moment is rivaling Julian for Lily's affections. Or so he thinks. He's built this whole story. Don't worry about it. So he takes that sword to go try and kill Julian, but when he uses it on him in a duel, or rather when Damon uses it after trying to split them up, Julian wakes right up afterwards and pulls it out of his heart. After that, following Lily's death in the next episode, Julian is now at war with the Salvatore brothers. And he's in possession of the sword and the stone. Ring shot. He combines the two into the weapon that it's meant to be. He puts the stone into the hilt of the sword and makes it the full Phoenix Sword and brings it into battle. And he explains to them that this stone, which is a prison for vampire souls, when you're stabbed with the sword, your soul goes into the stone. But it's not just a prison. It's also designed to put you through hell. A hell that's specifically designed for you and the things that you've done in life. After explaining that, in the fight with Damon, he stabs him with the sword and imprisons him in the Phoenix Stone. And he leaves with the sword. And then half an hour later, Nora comes back with the sword and stabs Stefan. So I thought that was a little strange. I didn't realize that was the order of events there. It's Julian leaves, and then we cut away to whatever the B-plot is. And then we cut back to Stefan over Damon's now vacant body. And Caroline's with him oh, what happened? And Stefan's explaining what happened. And then Nora suddenly uninvisiquays in the middle of the room holding the sword. And I'm so did you just grab it from Julian on the way out? What happened here?
Maybe he let her have it. I mean, he wasn't particularly fond of the Salvatore brothers.
Yeah, I guess it's just interesting that he willingly gave it to someone else, considering he had been in the stone for 110 years, give or take. So it's just I had thought he would be more concerned with keeping it in his possession, especially because Nora had just sided with Valerie and Lily and crew when that schism happened.
Oh, is this after that happens? Okay, yeah, that is
This is
weird.
after.
That is a weird decision.
But she comes to stab Stefan because Julian's the one who tells her that Stefan has kidnapped Mary Louise to try and draw in Julian. So
maybe
Nora
that's
has a
why.
reason to stab Stefan. Yeah, I guess Julian is like, yeah, I got nothing
Maybe
to worry about.
he figured I can trust her now because her girlfriend is on the line. I mean, Dagger Watch featuring the Phoenix Sword.
you know? But yeah, that's what's happened with the Phoenix Sword. So, other than those MacGuffins, the other big thing that needs to be addressed is this dreaded time jump. Season 7 makes the narrative decision to tell two concurrent storylines that are happening 3 years apart, which, not a new thing. Is it done well? That's up to you, listener, to decide for yourself. But in these flash forwards to 3 years from now, in the dark era, because everything's just dark at that time. I think it's because it's all happening in one night, and that's why all the scenes are just so dark. But Stefan is clearly running from something. In the first episode, he's in Brooklyn, New York. He opens like a garage door. There's two coffins sitting there. He, clearly injured, goes up, opens one of the coffins, reveals Damon's in there. He's desiccated. Stefan feeds him a blood bag and yells at him to get up. At the end of the episode, because they open with that in the episode, they do the whole episode in present day, and then they cut back to 3 years in the future. And Damon's like, I didn't want y'all to wake me up until Elena wakes up, because Elena's asleep for 80 years. So it's like, wow, at some point this season, Damon's just gonna put himself in the coffin with the intent of sleeping for 80 years, which I thought was fun because of vampires don't really do the coffin thing in this show, so this was a nice little nod.
Yeah.
But character-wise, wow, a choice. Stefan says he needs his help, and just as he's saying that, he sees something in the distance, he flips Damon's coffin around to have the lid block him as a shield, and 3 crossbow bolts thud into the open lid. And it's like, holy shit, what's going on? Who's he running from? And Damon says, she's back. And she won't stop until Stefan's dead. And then the two of them run off. So immediately it's like, okay, who the hell is this new character? Why do they want Stefan of all people? Just a lot of intrigue is being built.
It's Catherine!
It's Catherine! She's come back from oblivion somehow. And now she wants to kill him, finally, for revenge. In the next flash forward, we see Caroline, who's now what is she? Is she a newswoman?
Some sort of news anchor woman.
Yeah, she's and she's not just the anchor, she seems to be running the show.
Which, I'm like, you accomplished this in 3 years after your second year of college or third year of college? Damn.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past her. She's very ambitious and very organized. But also, it's is it responsible for the anchor to also be the producer? I don't think so. I mean, I've watched the newsreader. That's a pretty high stress game. I think you should be focusing on being talent, girly. But not my business.
I guess it's the equivalent of those people who are executive producers on TV shows that they also host.
Yeah. Just a lot of work. I don't know. I'm not someone who seeks work in this lifetime. I say as I produce our podcast, but also host on it. Oh, God. But yeah, Caroline is a news anchor, and one of her assistants shows up. I think they'd spoken about her fiance's calling her, and it's oh, we assume it's Stefan because they're together. But then this guy comes and mentions, oh, you got a call from a Stefan Salvatore. And she's like, I never want to hear that name again. Oh, no. What now? This time jump, man. But just as they're having that conversation, as she turns away from him, her assistant gets shot in the throat with I assume a tranquilizer dart. I don't think it was a bolt or anything. I think he just goes down. She goes to try and help him, and then she gets shot with a stake through her abdomen. And then she goes down. 5 episodes later is the next flash forward. Damon has gone and fetched Rick because Caroline's doing this broadcast on news now, and it's this is a message for Stefan Salvatore. Please come to the news station in Dallas. I think they're in Dallas, Texas.
A wild step to take for this for this universe. like,
yeah, I don't. Oof. It's so they were throwing so many things at us in this jump forward of like, wow, everything has changed, and yet also nothing. But that's a story for another day. But Damon goes and fetches Alaric because he's like, listen, we need backup. And also, as it turns out, Alaric is the fiance in question.
Which we can unpack it in an Alaric or Caroline episode. We will.
So they're going to go, I don't know, do something. They're macho bros. They're going to save the day. But Damon asks Rick to wait outside because he's like, it's obviously a trap. Listen, I'm going to sort it out. I have a plan. Damon's whole thing in this season is I have a plan. And the plan is dog shit. So he goes in and he sees that the broadcast that Caroline's doing is not live. It's in fact been recorded and is being looped. And so he's like, god damn it. And then he gets shot by 3 darts in the back and he goes down.
It's a whole lot of darts, by the way. Like
it's like 5 down his spine.
It like frames his spinal column.
It's in the T2 and the T3. In episode 8, the flash forward, at this point, Lily is like about to die, essentially. So at the beginning, Damon is like tied up in a seat with like vervain ropes, assumedly, or maybe just regular ropes. And this woman off screen is like taunting him and speaking to him. When she steps into the light, you see Lily Salvatore, and it's like, what? And at this point, Lily isn't dead. So you're like 3 years from now, she's orchestrating all this for some reason, all this like flash forward stuff. And then Lily dies in the episode. So you're like, okay, it can't be her unless they bring her back somehow. End of the episode, you hear that Damon is under the effects of a werewolf toxin. He's been injected with werewolf venom. And when he calls this person mom and apologizes for everything he's done, the figure leans forward and like the blur sort of like comes into focus, and it's not Lily Salvatore. It's this woman you don't recognize. She's slightly off screen, slightly in shadow, so you can't really see her face, but it's very clearly not Lily. And she kicks him in the face. And that's how it ends. Finally, in episode 11, we start to hear about who this figure is. Nora Hildegard, one of the heretics, who currently Bonnie is trying to befriend because she and Mary Lou have just broken up. Lily's dead. Valerie's off doing whatever. Bo is dead. So Nora's just kind of here by herself. And Bonnie's like, listen, I'm going to make friends with the lesbian. Better to have her as a friend than an ally. Also, is there a vibe between us? What's happening? I can't tell.
Is Bo dead at that point?
No, Bo's just absent for whatever reason. You're right. He dies in the next episode. Bo's just not here. Yeah, Bonnie's like, I'm going to make friends with Nora. So they've kind of been talking back and forth. She encounters Nora in the grill or some sort of like restaurant situation. I forget what Bonnie says, but Nora's pissed for some reason. She's like, I thought you were my friend. Why would you do something like this? And Bonnie's like, cool your jets. What are you talking about? And Nora holds out this postcard that has a bright red X on it. And is like, oh, you're getting your bestie, the huntress, to come after me. And Bonnie's like, what? This seems insane as like your first assumption. But all right, what are you talking about?
She assumed Bonnie and the Mystic Falls gang, had sent that as like a prank. How she thought they would know what that X meant to her is anyone's guess. But she's like, is this your idea of a joke? And Bonnie's like, I have no context for this. I don't know what you're talking about.
Truly no idea. She's like, why are you so afraid of the alphabet? What's going on, guys? But Bonnie's like, I don't know who you're talking about. And Nora says, well, you certainly know her weapon. And Bonnie's like, oh, the Phoenix sword. And it's like, this seems like a strange way to get to the point. But all right, guys. So Nora explains that there's this huntress who owned this Phoenix sword. And she's the one who stabbed Julian and put him in the stone. She's the one who stabbed Bo and gave him his scar. Once you've been marked by that scar, she can find you anywhere. She can track you down no matter where you are in this world. And so then you start to put together, oh, Stefan's being hunted down 3 years in the future. Stands to reason this huntress is now after him. However that happens. Bonnie's like, well, Nora, we're besties now, and I'll do anything to protect my besties. What the hell are we going to do with this huntress? And that's how that episode ends. And in the next episode, they set out to find the huntress before she finds them. Which is like, Honestly, if they'd left well enough alone, they would have gotten at least a few more years under their belt before they had to worry about her.
Yeah.
They really invited the danger into their home.
Yeah, but that's a running gag with the protagonists of this show. They are often the architects of their own undoing.
Exactly that. So they do a locator spell on Rayna. I forget what they used to do the actual locator spell.
It might have just been the sword itself.
Yeah, I guess because Nora still has the sword in her possession, right? But they do a locator spell, they find it, and I want to put a pin in that one for later. So they do the locator spell, they find that she's in Ohio. Mary Lou makes an appearance and is like, "What are you doing with this girl, our enemy?" I love
your Mary Lou.
So good. She's just so mean-spirited for no reason, and she has this very specific, like, vocal quality that I'm just like, this itches my brain in the best way. Tell me my girlfriend looks good. Bitch, shut up! Love her.
She sounds like a snooty, somewhat upper-class English mean girl.
Exactly that. Oh, I don't know if you've ever seen, what's that Emma Roberts movie where she has to go to British, like, boarding school?
I have not seen that movie.
Oh, it has Alex Pettifer in it. It's like, hey, Poppy Moore. Her name's Poppy Moore in the movie. Hold on, I'm going to Google this because I need to know.
Poppy Moore is a terrible name to have. I can only imagine the jokes that
her mom's British. That's like the whole thing. It's like her mom went to this boarding school. Her dad's American, I think. No, he might also be British, but she grew up in America, and that's why she's Emma Roberts.
That's why she's Emma Roberts?
That's the only explanation. It's called Wild Child. It's actually a really fun movie that I think holds up. There's this actress in it who plays the antagonist, who is this upper-class mean girl at a boarding school. She has the exact same vocal quality. I think her name was Harriet in the movie. God, I hope she's doing well. I hope she's killing it. So Mary Lou shows up because she and Nora are still broken up, and she's like, why are we still broken up? I feel like what's sorted has been sorted. Nora's like, you kind of suck as a human being, so I don't know why you think I would just like come crawling back to you.
Her logic during that entire fight is wild. It's like Nora is like, I broke up with you because I believed our adoptive sister that we weirdly share, even though we're a couple. I believed Valerie when she told us that, you know, Julian was an abusive, violent manipulator who orchestrated the death of her child and gaslit Lily into siding with him. And then Lily believed her, and Bo believed her, and we all chose to side with her. And then you ruined everything by choosing to believe Julian over all the rest
Lily
of us.
Killed.
You got Lily killed. And even after Lily had died, you still refused to admit you were the problem. And you were like, it's Valerie's lies. Valerie made up being pregnant with Stefan's child. And even if she was telling the truth, she's lied before, so she doesn't deserve our trust now.
It's like she's so fundamentally the bad guy in this situation that it's insane that she's like, you're letting all these people split us apart. It's like, Mary Lou, reflect. You're losing your girl. She doesn't lose her. They get back together. Because Bonnie's like, listen, I like you, Nora. We're chill. But, like, stop using me to make your girlfriend jealous. Just go sort out whatever you need to
Right? I was like, hey, I mean, she might be using you. But I was like, Bonnie and Nora, there's some chemistry there.
There's very much chemistry there. Bonnie is vibing for it. And it's so unfortunate that, like, of the like, morally questionable people we could have put her in a relationship in season 7, I would have picked Nora by a mile.
Yes.
I would have picked Nora by a mile. Give me bisexual Bonnie. I love it. I don't know. It's a shame. So, the three of them follow this locator spell. They get to Ohio. They get to this hospital. They compel their way in, of course. And they go to the room where Rayna's being held. And it's this, like, 60-something woman. She's chained up for whatever reason. But she just looks, like, kind of old and doddering and kindly. And Mary Lou's still like, well, we should slit her throat and get this over with. But like Nora and Bonnie are like, I don't know, man. I don't think this is her. Because when they met her in 1903, she was like, you know, a young woman in her like 20s maybe. And she had been that way since Julian had seen her first. Right. I'm not sure when. It might be later on, so I won't mention it now. But we know that Julian had an encounter with Rayna in his past, like decades prior, and she still looked about as young. So it's like, this old woman can't be her.
I think one of them, it might be Mary Lou, who's the trigger happy one who wants to kill her. I think she mentions that, she was given, immense strength to be this vampire huntress. Who's to say she wasn't given a long life to go with it?
Which turns out to be true. So the heretics head off for whatever reason, I guess because I think that's when Bonnie's like, the lesbians need to go sort out their drama.
They went to go check some of the other rooms to see if maybe Rayna Cruz was staying in that asylum under a different name, and this lady was like a decoy.
Bonnie goes to speak to this woman because she's just like, I mean, might as well. And the woman is like, oh, hey, because they've spoken to her and she's been like, I don't know what y'all are talking. Vampires? Y'all sound crazy. I'm just in here. I'm just the grandma. And Bonnie goes over and is like, are you okay? And she's like, oh, you seem like a nice girl. What's your name, sweetie? And she's like, I'm Bonnie. She's like, oh, Bonnie, why are you hanging out with these deviant creatures, these vampires? And it's like, whoa, Coco, what happened? And Bonnie, without flinching, Bonnie's like, oh, so you are Rayna Cruz. And so this is the first we see of Rayna Cruz as this older woman. This older white woman, by the way.
Yeah!
We'll get to that later.
I couldn't...
That was interesting.
I didn't Google the actress and I was like, I don't have proof, but this does not look like...
I did Google her. There's not enough of her on the internet to like determine. She's not like, big. So I'm making an assumption and maybe that's not great, but it's like... Damn, she really looked white. Like, I don't know what to do with this. Anyway, not important. She's like, yeah, I am Rayna Cruz. I am the huntress. Bonnie's like, then why the hell are you in here? And she's like, well, I had an incident, this whole huntress thing. It kind of messes with my brain the older I get. I stabbed a checkout lady at a store because I thought she was a vampire. So, they locked me up. So it's already painting a really crazy picture. So Bonnie's like, wow, wild stuff. I think I'm gonna go. Probably best to leave you here. She's like, oh, can you please get me a cookie? Oh, Bonnie had gone and gotten her a cookie is what it is when she thought it was just some old woman. Yes. She was like, can you get me a cookie?
She asked for a cookie when all three of them were in the room. And after Mary Lou and Nora leave, Bonnie decides to go get her an oatmeal cookie anyway to sort of like, butter her up for the questions she wants to ask.
So she's like, can you help me eat this cookie? My hands are tied up. So Bonnie goes over and tries to get the cookie. Rayna grabs her, yanks her towards her, and like wraps something around and starts to strangle her. And it's like, oh, she may be old, but she is clear in the eyes and she's strong as hell. You don't mess with this grandma.
Bonnie tries to do a spell to defend herself.
Yes!
And Rayna just chuckles and is like, haha, your magic won't work on me, sweetie. And it's like, oh, okay.
Right. So she reveals that piece of like world building information, but then it's like, how did the locator spell work on her if magic doesn't work on her? How did they find her with magic? I thought that was interesting.
Huh.
I don't know. I guess because the implication is that like magic doesn't work on her like physically, so you could argue that a locator spell's from a distance, but a locator spell is tracking you, the person. So if magic doesn't work on you, then
and we do know that in this universe, because of the originals, that there is a building that is like a magical blind spot where magic doesn't work in New Orleans, and if you go there, locator spells can't find you.
Interesting choices. Don't know what that's about. So Bonnie's being strangled by this old ass woman. Enzo suddenly shows up. Enzo, who's been missing from the show for like 2 or 3 episodes, and it's like, where's he been? And also, who cares? And he just throws a knife into Rayna's throat, killing her. And then she's dead. And it's like, huh? What's going on? So Bonnie's like, huh? What's going on? Enzo explains that, oh, where had Enzo just gone? Oh, Enzo had been like, Matt had brought in some people to snatch Enzo.
He had brought people to snatch Enzo, and we hadn't. That was the last we'd seen of Enzo, and suddenly he's walking about free, and we're like, huh?
What's going on? Yeah, Matt had called Tyler, and Tyler had brought in some, quote, friends, and then they snatched Enzo, and then Enzo comes back, and he's like, yeah, sorry, I've got some buddies of mine that are interested in this girlie, so that's why I'm here. I'm actually the one who sent the postcards, not as a prank, but as a trick to have the heretics lead me straight to Rayna Cruz. And now I've got her. And Bonnie's like, why? Since when do you matter plot-wise? And before Enzo can answer, he's like, help me get this body out of here, and then we can talk about this. And Bonnie's like, the heretics are like out and about. I need to go fetch them first. She goes and fetches them, and when they come back, the body's gone, and Enzo's gone. And Bonnie's like, that little weasel. And it's like, yeah, he sucks, Bonnie. Hope you hold on to that in future times. Enzo, who's disappeared with his body, the next time you see him, he's in this facility. He has placed the body of Rayna Cruz in this open, like, room. He just places the body and he's, like, on the phone waiting and waiting. And then suddenly Rayna Cruz's body catches a light and burns and immolates completely. And the whole room fills with, like, smoke. And then after, like, a really tense second, a hand slams against the glass, and appearing through the smoke is a much younger woman. And we see that this is the Rayna Cruz that we've seen in flashbacks.
Well, flash forwards.
Flash forwards, sorry. Yes, flash forwards. So that's the end of that episode. And in the next episode, this woman's work is when we get the full backstory flashback for Rayna. We see a young Rayna in 1857. She's like, I don't know, 5 maybe. And she's with her dad, who I don't remember if we get a name for him in that scene, but his name is Vicente Cruz. And initially, when I watched the show, I had thought that they were like South American. I mean, I don't know what the timeline is of like Spanish colonization, but I believe this is after. This has to be after, like,
yeah, it's
Spanish
the
and Portuguese
1850s.
colonization.
Yeah, I'm sure they were already in South America.
Because Vicente Cruz, I thought maybe they were Mexican, and the actor is from Mexico. He's from Zacatecas, Mexico. Her very handsome dad. So I had thought so, and then I looked at the actress, Leslie Ann Huff Penaligan. She is Filipino. She's half Filipino. And so I was like, oh, interesting.
Oh.
Yeah, and Cruz is sometimes a Filipino surname.
Yeah. A lot of Spanish.
I say sometimes.
A lot of Spanish influence
exactly.
in the Philippines, yeah. Because of colonialism.
Gotta love it. And then I read on I don't know if it was the wiki or if it was an article or something, that her father calls her a nickname that is a Filipino nickname. It's a Filipino word for like.
Oh, I think he calls
something.
her Nene.
Nene. Mm-hmm. So she is texturally Filipino in the show. I believe her father is still Spanish, so it's like maybe her mother was like Filipino.
Okay.
Because he's speaking in Spanish.
Yeah.
Also, I then was like, how does this work historically? Turns out some of the earliest like Asian American immigration is Filipino people. There were a lot of Filipino people in the 1700s because of Spanish colonization, were some of the first people to alight on North American shores. And in fact, this region, Louisiana, was a big like settlement for Filipino people.
Wow, Louisiana's really a melting pot.
1, and 2, surprisingly well-researched Vampire Diaries, which very often is muddy with like race stuff. It's like, wow, you for sure like set this out right. They're in St. Malo, which is specifically a settlement that was like heavy with Filipino people. So it's like, okay, works out. Anyway, young Rayna Cruz, her dad he's doing something to his arm, and she asks him what he's doing, and he's like, I'm tracing this for you, the hunter's mark. And you who have seen season 4 and season 5 know what the hunter's mark is. That means her father is one of the 5.
Ooh.
Or is one of the 5 at some point in history. And it's like, whoa, okay, thought the storyline had been done away with forever. This is cool. He's tracing the mark because, as you may or may not know, the hunter's mark is invisible from anyone who is not a hunter or a potential hunter. So he is drawing over it with like charcoal or something so that she can see what the mark looks like. And she asks why she can't see it, and he explains that no one else can see it except for us. And she's like, when am I gonna get my mark? And it's this cute little thing where it's like, I want to be like you, Dad. But also it's like, I'm a vampire hunter, girly. That's not an easy road. And he says as much. He says, my hope is that you'll never have to, but if you want to do what I do, you gotta train up.
I also assume that he was thinking, if she were to get the mark, that would have to mean she is a potential, which means she'd probably get it after he dies. So he was probably thinking, I don't want that to happen.
Or after another hunter dies, and just by virtue of her connection to him, she becomes a potential, right? Because Jeremy became a potential for Connor, while Connor was perfectly well and fine. So assumedly, or I guess, actually,
Yeah,
on.
Jeremy had already met and interacted with Connor by the time Connor died, and then Jeremy was awakened as his successor. So
What's the implication of a potential? Is it that your death is now marked? That's like a fascinating read on it.
I think no, I don't think it's that you are close to death. I think it's just that someone with the chops, the necessary chops to be a vampire hunter, possibly someone who needs to be younger than you, is like hovering around, and the magic is like, oh, this person is now marked as your successor if and when you die. And then I guess if they happen to kill a vampire after your death, that awakens them fully and also ends your hunter's curse.
It's interesting then that Jeremy, having never met Connor, just walking past him, saw the tattoo and was like a potential. I guess because of all his hunting exploits, right?
Yeah, he'd been building up as a hunter over time. He was Alaric's little protege. And I think Connor explains it as, if I'm remembering correctly, it's someone who would have a reason to be against vampires. And I'm like, yeah, vampires have, screwed up Jeremy's life quite a lot. I understand.
So, yeah, interestingly, she would be... Oh, it gets really interesting. Let me keep going and then we can get into it. Her father starts training her up. He's got this sword and he's got this little short sword that he's made for her. And it's very familiar. It is, in fact, what becomes the Phoenix sword. So she's training to use that. They're sword fighting in the darkness in the woods, and then at some point there's a transition and she's like older. It's very what's the thing I'm thinking about?
Zorro?
No. What? No. When it's like a young girl, and then I'm thinking of Horizon Zero Dawn. That's so random. There's a video game, Horizon Zero Dawn, where there's the main character is this young girl, and she's being trained up by effectively her adoptive father, because she's this like exiled orphan. It's really messed up. And she's doing all these like acrobatic trainings, and she's jumping across hills and stuff. She's this little toodle pip at like 6 or 7. And at some point she jumps a really big gap, and then when she lands and tumbles to like get up again, she's like 16. And it's like, okay, transition, love to see it. But we see then Rayna as she is now, sort of like late teens, early 20s, and they're fighting, and she's actually like matching him in terms of combat. He trumps her, and then he says some sort of like, advisory thing like, watch your back, or like, expect your enemy's move, or something cool like that. And she manages to like spin around and use her youth and agility to get the jump on him. And it's this really cute moment with like father and daughter, and it's like, oh, nothing could spoil this moment. Immediately the call is sounded, vampires. And it's interesting that in the settlement, whatever the vibe is here, similar to like your Mystic Falls, people know about vampires here. There's like a setup call because vampires are such a common problem that they've got like warning systems now to be like, the vampires are coming. Round up the hunters. We must defend the town. It's so fascinating, and it's in a far more... Ooh, this fully just popped into my head because it's the settlement of like Filipino and like Southern American people, right? Who like live here in Louisiana, defending themselves against vampires versus the like landed gentry of Mystic Falls who are building this town with their colonial wealth and like ousting the town of vampires. It's two very different vibes, even though they're doing the same thing. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Her father heads off to go and face the vampires.
Typical of this kind of a setup. He's like, stay here, my young protege. You're not ready to face the vampires. I'm going to go off and do this on my own. And she's all like, no, father,
Yeah.
I'm ready. I can help. And he's like, no, you're inexperienced. Stay behind.
And she does stay behind. And then when she heads off to find him, Vicente is grievously wounded. He's propped up against a tree, and this vampiric figure is hovering over him. When he turns to see Rayna approaching, you hear him speaking in his stupid little voice, but you see that it is Julian. Julian of the Heretic house.
Julian, our discount Niklaus.
We
We have Klaus Michelson at home.
It is never more clear than in this scene that, wow, they were really trying to do discount Klaus. From someone who is like Klaus ambivalent most times, I like Klaus in the originals most. In the Vampire Diaries, take him or leave him. No one can match up to Klaus. They try it with Enzo, they try it with Julian, it simply doesn't work. And it's funny, they try to do both sides of Klaus with the two of them.
Yeah.
Enzo's like violence isn't commensurate with the kind of like violence and terror that Klaus emanates. They're trying to capture Klaus's quote romantic side with Enzo, and they're trying to capture Klaus's barbarism with Julian. And neither of them, well, Enzo's just as like annoying as Klaus is in terms of like
It just
walking
doesn't
around
work on
calling everyone
Caroline
love.
for whatever personal reasons. She
Exactly.
has.
It's like, what are we doing here?
But I couldn't help but notice in this season, just speaking on Julian, if we can go on a brief tangent.
Yeah, Lord knows we have nothing else to talk about.
It's just, it irritated me that at this point in the show, because you know, with shows with superpowers, often you have this thing called power, what is it? Power creep
Power
and
creep.
seep. Power creep, where gradually these superpowered people either they themselves get stronger or their skills just get so refined that all of their antagonists get more and more powerful. And then it's like in season 7, after having dealt with, you know, Catherine Pierce, the 500-year-old vampire, then Niklaus and his siblings, the virtually unkillable 1,000-year-old vampires, and then Silas, the first immortal, who's like Professor X level psychic,
Right.
and then, you know, the travelers who were kind of boring, but were quite powerful. It's like now our antagonist is Julian, who is maybe about Catherine's age, if not younger, but it's like, oh,
Not
he's
even.
centuries.
He's like 300.
He's
like 300
Lexi's
something.
age? Gosh.
He's Lexi's age.
Lexi, who Damon killed simply by taking her by surprise, but they keep treating it like, oh, we can't just attack Julian. He's so powerful. We can't he'll wipe the floor with us. And I'm like, the two of you held your own against Catherine for a good couple of minutes and almost succeeded in killing her until you realized she was linked to Elena.
Yeah.
In that masquerade episode of season 2. The two of you have gone up against multiple originals. Jeremy, a hunter who's not that strong by the standards of super strength in this show, and Elena, a newbie vampire, were able to kill Cole, an original. Why is Julian suddenly such a threat?
I guess he's been in hell. His like instincts have been sharpened by adversity. He just can't be taken down. He's too good.
He's actually kind of unstable. So I'm like, if anything, you should be able to get the jump on him if you got the jump on Lexi, who was very level-headed when Damon killed her.
What's the expression? An animal is never more dangerous than when it is wounded.
I guess.
And also, it's like, this means nothing in the nature of vampire combat, but he's like a swordsman, I think. He's like an accomplished swordsman. So maybe that too. Every time they fight, he's always pulling out swords. So maybe that's the problem. Everyone keeps copying to his like sword duel gambit and just like going in with it. It's like, yeah, he's gonna beat you in a sword fight. Like, what are we doing
They're
here?
scared he's gonna decapitate them. I was just like, it's weird that the narrative is like, Damon always happy to kill someone.
Yep.
Stefan very much itching to murder this man.
Yep.
It's like, but we have to tread lightly because, you know, he's so dangerous. He's like 3 times our age. And I'm like, what are you doing? You fought the original.
Well, the thing is, right, the first time that happened, that wasn't the reason Damon was stopping Stefan. Damon was like, I've got my own plan about how we're gonna kill Julian so he can perfectly spite our mother. That was all that shit. They could have killed Julian that time if Damon wasn't like trying to hinder Stefan in his plan to kill Julian. If Damon had helped him, I think they would have killed him easy. And then after that, he's always on guard. So it's like, it's gonna be more difficult. So, not to be like, it's Damon's fault, but like...
Who was on guard more than Catherine Pierce, though? I mean,
True.
if you can fight Catherine...
I mean, they put in the work to fool her, though, and they got her in that one room. She couldn't escape. It's like...
That's true. She couldn't...
After some time, like, you're gonna go down, you know?
I guess the benchmark will always be the Cole of it all. It's like Cole taken down by a newly awakened hunter and a vampire who wasn't even a year into her vampire life.
I thought it was fine, though. It was like a 5-minute fight. It was a long-ass set
I love
piece.
the fight scene. It's just that, you know, I know you
They're
don't like power
chicken
scaling.
scratching to kill that
But
man.
I'm like, if you're gonna say, oh, these people are so powerful because they get older with age, and then it's like, well, no, apparently with a bit of luck and good timing, a brand new vampire can take down 1,000-year-old vampire. It's like, okay, so the threat isn't that big. Spray him with vervain like like Jeremy and Elena did to Cole.
Douse him with the municipal water. Oh, man. But Julian is here about to kill Vicente. He's like, oh, what a game of sport we've had. But now it's time for you to die. And then Rayna, in a gambit to keep him from killing her father, says, you can't kill him. He's got the mark. He's the hunter of the 5. And if you kill him, you'll be afflicted with the hunter's curse. It'll drive you mad. Julian seems to know what the hunter's curse is, so he's aware of the 5. So he's like, we've got a bit of a conundrum then, don't we? Well, I suppose I won't kill your father. You will. And he rushes over and she screams so like emotionally, as he's running over to her, in the time it takes for him to like vamp rush to stand right in front of her, she like sees it coming already that, oh no, he's gonna make me do it. He compels her and says, no, calm down. It's all good. All you're gonna do is do what you were raised to, become the killer that your father probably wants you to be, and you're gonna kill him. And I'm gonna go. Deuces. And he skips off, and Rayna lifts her short sword, sobbing and slowly walking towards her father. Her father the whole time is like, it's okay. It's not your fault.
Even though...
Even though what?
Even though... The reason I invoked that trope of the, the protégé who's like, I don't want to stay behind. I can help. I can fight. I'm like, Rayna, you had no way of knowing this, but if you had just left well enough alone, yes, your father would have died anyway.
Yeah.
But at least the hunter's curse would have taken Julian with it.
But she didn't want her father to die.
Whereas now your dad's dying and Julian's living.
Yeah, I guess he's dying anyway, So, of the two scenarios.
Also, it just occurred to me, crazy that in this town, you just mentioned, it seems like this town is aware of vampires. They're in the know. They have a whole alarm system going on. Why is Rayna not on Vervain?
Did they have a vein?
I mean, it's not that. It seems like everyone in this world who knows about vampires has Vervain.
But like,
I mean, her father wouldn't be able to be compelled.
Yeah, he's a hunter of the five.
If the rest of this town is full of people who know, you would think they'd be on Vervain.
If they have it, I mean, like, when is this after or before? This is before 1864, though, because I was like Damon Brazil the Vervain in Mystic Falls. But does Vervain grow everywhere? Don't know. Like, communication and travel in the mid 1800s is so slow that it's like, what are the chances of you learning about this plant being toxic to vampires if it doesn't grow where you live,
That's fair. I would just think one
There's
of the
every
five.
possibility they didn't have it.
I would think one of the Brotherhood of the Five.
The way the five magic passes down is like, because it could go to anyone across the world. Like, the first five were in Europe, and now we're in Louisiana, so it's like, you could have just woken up with that mark on your hands and had no idea what the hell happened. You could have passed someone by at a train station, and suddenly you are potential, and you didn't even realize it. And then that hunter died wherever they died, and you woke up with a tattoo, and suddenly you know what vampires are. So it's like, do you get instinctually what Vervain is? I don't think so.
I assume that because the potentials are always people who are already like budding vampire hunters, that maybe they'd have learned a few tricks already, a few tools of the trade, and they'd know. But then again, I'm judging it by the 21st century where everyone knows about Vervain, even witches who don't need it.
Right.
It's like, oh, every other person, a vampire.
Right. Where that knowledge is commonplace and easily shareable, not just by like the spirits, but also by like the internet. So
they're like Googling what kills real vampires.
What kills a vampire
in this
For
universe
serious,
where
for
vampires
real.
Exist. Serious answers only, please.
Jeremy Core. But yeah, she has to walk over this clearing and go kill her father. And her father's like, remember what I've taught you. Remember this moment. And you'll always know who the enemy is and what they are. Vampires are a scourge upon the living and must be eradicated. And so she's like apologizing. She's saying, I love you. And then she finally stabs him and he dies. Really traumatic beginning for a character. That is the thing about Rayna Cruz, is that like in a show where so many characters are marred by trauma, her story is so traumatic start to finish, because immediately after being compelled to kill her own father, she, however it happens, runs into a group of like indigenous American shamans. They never say what tribe. There's a number of tribes that are in that particular region, so there's no like telling which is which. And I don't know enough about indigenous practices to know if one, the like ritual that they do is real. It's probably not.
Probably not.
And two, is it recognizable to which tribe's practices? I simply could not know that and will not presume to. But what happens is she engages a group of shamans from this particular tribe. 8 of them are sitting in a circle around this fire pit, and she's sitting in front of the one who's like directing the ritual. And so they, to make a long story short, ask the Great Spirit, I think is who they reference, to give Rayna the strength and the agility to take on vampires, and to give her the desire to hunt them and to not stop until they have all been eradicated from this earth. Which is the moment where she's like, wait, hold on, guys. This is getting intense. And then they're like, in addition to this, because she drinks this tea of protection too, they're like, she drinks the tea of protection. No magic can be used against her. No vampire will be able to enchant her. And then they all start picking up these little like ritual knives. They've got like these feather and thread situation going on at the hilt. And they all go, we all give up our singular lives so that she may live many. And all the shamans start stabbing themselves in the chest and dropping dead. And Rayna's looking around in horror like, no, I didn't ask for all of this. What the heck's going on? And the guy who's running the rituals like, carry out the mission. It must be done. And then he stabs himself. And he dies. Oh, they've given her, I believe it's them who give her the Phoenix Stone and bind it to her short sword. So they link her to this sword so that she'll never be able to lose it. And so that when she marks an enemy, she can hunt them down to the ends of the earth. It's really interesting, like mystical, magical stuff.
Yeah.
But also, damn girl, like what a bad rap.
I guess it's that thing of magic having a price, because I was thinking about it and it's kind of annoying that it's like, oh, the reason that she's a huntress, the first woman to be a huntress, a supernatural huntress in this show, by the way, because all the 5 members, the Brotherhood of the 5, they're always men. It's Jeremy, it's Connor, it's Vaughn, it's Alexander, and now Vicente Cruz. It's like, oh, she's only in this because, you know, she's a young woman whose father was in it before her.
She's a mechanic because her dad was a mechanic.
Yeah.
She can't be interested in the trade. It's like in those Hollywood movies where there's a girl scientist in the room and it's like, my dad wanted everything for this mission. And it's like, sorry, you couldn't have been into STEM by yourself? Why is your dad in it? God.
But even though that is like the setup, it's nice that out of all the supernatural hunters we get, she's easily the most powerful.
She's the most powerful.
She has a magical weapon. I mean, the 5 have their swords, but the swords don't do anything except decipher where the cure is, you know, where Silas was buried.
If anything, they like etch them with the symbol of the 5 for fun. It's like they were looking at Connor's stuff. Stefan brings a bullet to Bonnie to inspect and is like, do you know what the symbol is? And I look back and I was like, why did he etch that symbol in? It doesn't do anything. It's not like he's inscribing magic.
I think the bullets were spelled because Stefan touches the bullets and they burn him, and it's not vervain. They're just like wooden bullets that are spelled. Who spelled them? I don't know.
Did the Witch of the 5 like make it so that whatever you inscribe that symbol into becomes like an anti-vampire thing? That would be really cool if that was the case.
They never elaborate on it. Like after Stefan is like, oh, these bullets are spelled. This is a very special hunter. Like it doesn't happen again. Connor doesn't use spelled items. Neither do any of the other 5 that we meet.
Fascinating.
But I thought it was cool that Rayna is like this unstoppable force. Unlike the 5, she has longevity as one of her superpowers, whereas they all have like mortal lives. Even though it's like, oh, Rayna's the first woman huntress we meet, she's by far the most effective, by far the most powerful, by far the most terrifying. And it actually makes sense that someone trying to magically create a being to, you know, compete with vampires would give them all the skills that Rayna has. I mean, frankly, she could have even done with more, but she has quite a few. Whereas the hunters from the 5 is like, oh, you're just strong and durable.
You're like a little bit stronger. You've got like instincts. You can sense vampires. It's like Rayna can do that too, but better.
Yeah.
She is everything but better. And I do think though that like the fact that she was a daughter of one of the 5, as we just spoke about earlier, is that like she could very easily have been a potential. So it's like she earned it the same way everyone did. Her life was ruined by vampires.
Yeah.
I think it's perfectly fine that she becomes the most powerful hunter of the 5. If anything, the fact that like your life was ruined by vampires while your parent was a hunter of the 5, it only compounds that hunter trauma. Like, you should be
She's
super
the best
hunter.
of them. But yeah, my point was that maybe because the spell that created her was even more violent and a bit dark and kind of, you know, like steeped in all sorts of arcane stuff, maybe that's why she's better than the regular hunters of the 5.
Yeah, the implication that it's a different type of magic too, that like the show would never explore the intricacies of that. It's like,
oh yeah,
I want
the
to know more
shamans.
about what's going on there.
They
it's
always
like the
mention
shamans appear
shamans.
and then leave in the same episode. What are the shamans' names? What magic do they practice? Like, what's the vibe? I understand, obviously, it's like y'all probably don't know anything about the indigenous tribes of the region, so it's like we can't write too much about it because we will be wrong. But it's like, damn, sucks when they just show up for one scene and then you never see them again. I mean, I shouldn't say that. You never see them again, but we'll get to it. So that is how Rayna the Huntress was created. And I think that this is the other thing I want to talk about, because they call this the Phoenix Stone, right? The Phoenix in mythology, it exists in many cultures, but the most obvious mythos is Greek, right? Because that's where we know the phoenix to come from. A lot of cultures have like a firebird, even if it's like the resurrective aspect of it doesn't translate, but like a lot of cultures have like big firebird that does cool shit.
Yeah.
I don't think that there are... So there is one... This is a funny one because I was like, where did the stone come from? I know it comes from the shamans now, but I was like, if it was through like her Filipino ancestry, there is a bird called a minokawa.
Ooh.
I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but it's a giant dragon-like bird in Philippine mythology. Apparently it was so big, it can swallow the sun, and that was the explanation essentially for eclipses. Not especially a phoenix or anything, but that was as much as I could find. In like Native American mythologies, the closest one is the thunderbird, which is like it's one of the most commonly known like mythological figures in like Native American mythos. And it's this legendary creature. It's this bird with like when it flaps its wings, it causes thunder, and its eyes have like trails of lightning from them. It's really cool. Not a firebird, but an interesting thing I found out is that and I'm going to pronounce this wrong also, Algonquian tribes, which is one of the like North American like indigenous tribes, the way that they represented the thunderbird in like pictographs was an X shape.
Oh.
So that was interesting. I was like, oh, because it's like the wings of the thunderbird and then the feet. So it's like the upper two parts of the X are the wings, and then the lower two part are the feet. And then it would like vary, like there would be some like extra things on it, but the X shape was very noticeable. And I was like, interesting that the sword has an X shape to it too. And that's the mark that it leaves on its victims to put in this Phoenix Stone. I don't know. I thought that was like, it doesn't fully like mesh together with the way the objects come together, but I thought it was interesting.
Now I'm wishing that her sword could generate lightning or fire. You know, I'm always wanting the flashier magic in this universe.
Yeah. I've come back to like 50-50 on that because I saw one of these big accounts. I follow this account that like tweets about comics all the time, but they tweet about Vampire Diaries, and they were talking about how the magic system in the Vampire Diaries is very visceral. And that in itself is like a really cool thing. And then like when they went to Legacies, it suddenly became like Harry Potter. And I was like, yeah, I guess when I think about it, like, would it be... I still would be more interested in seeing like Bonnie, for example, like hurl a fireball. You know, that would be cool as shit.
I never wanted Hogwarts. I wanted like Buffy.
Yeah.
Or even Charmed. Occasionally Charmed would do flashy things.
Charmed would be... Because Charmed still has that primal element where it's like, we invoke the spirits, we chant, we like work with these primordial energies. It's really like cool stuff. But it's like, Bonnie's largely... And magic in the Vampire Diaries is largely like blood and bone and shadow and like breaking limbs.
Blood and bone and shadow. New book title.
New YA novel. Actually, no, wait. I'm pretty sure that's a book if you rearrange the words.
I mean, there's Shadow and Bone.
Blood and
I'm
Bone.
sure there's... Oh, there we go.
There's Shadow and Bone, and there's Children of Blood and Bone, which is a West African fantasy. So that was cool. Funny enough, it's about people who can do like magic shit, and they do like elemental stuff. Okay. So you know.
But like, like in Charmed, even though it's not always super flashy, it's still very... Yeah. It's very obvious magic. Like one of the main characters' like baseline powers is to freeze things like in motion, which
and
you'd never see something like
them
that in
and
the
scatter them into a million pieces. Yeah. In any case, that stuff about the Thunderbird being X-shaped, I just thought was like, that's an interesting coincidence. Maybe got folded in the writing process during research.
Maybe, hey, maybe it was intentional.
Yeah.
I'll say I'd be willing to believe they did that on purpose. I don't know for a fact that they did.
But that is the extent of the Rayna Cruz flashback. In present day, Rayna is in this facility where Enzo has trapped her. He's convinced she's not getting out. She comes up to the glass and punches it. You can immediately, there's like a sound effect that's like, boom. And it's like, oh, she's strong. And he's like, don't waste your time, love. You're not going to get out of there. And she's like, all right, bet. She starts punching and punching and punching. And her fist is getting bloody. There's like a little outline of like a blood stain that's on the glass now. And even that whole time as she's punching, she's testing it. And then she steps back in the room. Enzo's talking to someone else. I don't even know who. It might be Alexandria.
Probably.
Is Alexandria St. John here yet?
You know what? I fully forgot she existed as a character until doing this rewatch. I was like, what? And then when Virginia shows up, I was like, Virginia had a sister?
And then they have a third sister?
And then they have a third sister. And I was like, it's the Skarsgård effect. Every time you think they're done, there's one more.
Another St. John pops up. But yeah, we find out Enzo's working with this group called the Armory. This lady, Alexandria, she goes by Alex. He insists on calling her Alexandria, even though his name is Lorenzo and he insists on going by Enzo. It's an odd choice, but nothing Enzo does ever makes sense.
The Armory are who Tyler Lockwood had called.
Right,
to
yes.
Capture Enzo for Matt.
So he's just working with them now, and they've promised him, like, they're gonna find his family, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, it's like, why do you vampire serial killer who was all too happy to go about murdering people to deal with your trauma from being locked in a cage with Damon for several years? Why do you suddenly care about your distant human great-grandcousins?
Father. Oh, yeah. I guess it's because nobody wants him, right? And he's feeling lonely. He's like, damn, if I have some family, by all means. But yeah, they're busy having a conversation. Rayna steps back in her little glass enclosure and then leaps through the glass, shattering it completely. She tackles into Enzo and drops him to the ground. And then she gets up, she looks back with a smirk, and I was like, okay, we got a bad bitch right here. Let's go.
I like that she uses her own body as a battering ram and hurls herself through this glass, which seemed to be really solid.
Which is crazy because she's strong, but we learn later that she's not resilient. She didn't get a boost to her resilience. She still gets hurt like a human being. She gets scarred, she gets bruised, she has to like tie herself up. So it's like she burst through that glass without a care of like, am I gonna get sliced up? No, don't care, I'm getting out of here. She's kind of iconic.
I guess when you have the strength to exert force with your body, that helps, using yourself as a blunt instrument. Also, the human body is a lot harder than we give it credit for in terms of like our skeleton. It's just that it's too painful for us to use our own bones as, you know, a weapon or like, you know, punching through a wall or something like that. But we are made of pretty strong stuff. So I guess if you've got the super strength to back it up on top of that, using yourself as a battering ram to smash through this reinforced glass, the shock on Enzo's face is so satisfying.
Because he was like, don't waste your time, love. And I'm like, I hope she shows you, you son of a bitch. Who do you think you are? I think you hot shit because you got the armory on your side now. They don't even like you. They're using you. Idiot.
And it wasn't even that thing of like the glass like cracking first for a second and like that spider web thing that we later on see the siren do in the same place.
Which might be in the same enclosure.
Yes. Learning that Rayna had already done it.
Rooms.
I'm like, why do you have so much faith in this damn glass?
This plexiglass from PG Glass Repair. Like, what are you talking about? Oh, man. But she then nabs Enzo, actually, right? Because now she's trying to get her Phoenix sword back, which is in the possession of Bonnie. Because, of course, Enzo calls up Damon and is like, I'm gonna reveal... Oh, God. Okay, so Damon at this point believes he's burned Elena's coffin. Relevant to the current story? No, but that's what we're working with. Enzo knows about this because I guess he watched it happen. I don't really know. Or he heard from Tyler, who Damon beat up and then went into the coffin and then burned it because he'd just come out of the Phoenix Stone and he was like hallucinating.
Actually, for what it's worth, I don't know how Enzo knows that Damon believes this, because we later learned that it isn't true.
Yeah.
And he was hallucinating. So I'm like, how did Enzo know what you hallucinated?
Because the only person Damon's told is Stefan. So
Yeah.
it's like, I don't think you spoke to Stefan about it. So where are you getting this info? I do think they were just like watching him by like a camera or something where they were keeping the coffin and they just heard him be like, I burned down her coffin. Oh no. And they were like, leverage. It's tenuous, but for whatever reason Enzo knows, and he uses this as leverage to be like, I will expose the secret that you've burned Elena's coffin and body and destroyed any chance of her being reunited with her friends if you don't get me this Phoenix sword. He's like, why do you want the Phoenix sword? And he's like, did I ask you to ask questions? Get it. So Damon, of course, goes to Bonnie and said, my shit's more important than whatever you've got going on. Give me the sword. Bonnie and him fight. He eventually does get the sword. There's also some stuff going on with Stefan and Caroline and the Heretics because Caroline's giving birth that side, or rather going through a C-section. So Damon gets the Phoenix sword. I think he and Bonnie go to where Enzo is. And he goes to give over the sword. Enzo is tied up. And it's like, oh, damn, this was not of his volition. The huntress was using him to get the sword back. He ends up in a fight with the huntress. He loses handedly. Actually, yeah, Bonnie's not with him because Bonnie goes to where Stefan and Caroline are because she's just heard that Caroline's going through an emergency C-section. She goes to where the Heretics are. Bo, who's back now, his scar on his throat, which is from the Phoenix sword, opens up. And that's how they know that the Huntress is back in contact with her sword. And they're like, we've got to run because first person she's coming for is Bo now that she's got her sword back. So they run off. Bonnie sends Stefan to go help Damon because Damon's on a suicide mission at this point that I just truly don't care about. The Huntress beats him, takes the sword, is about to kill Damon. Stefan has to come to his rescue, jumps into the path of the blade, and he gets stabbed in the shoulder. And then it's like, oh, that's the flash forward. Of course she wasn't hunting Stefan to hunt Stefan. Of course Stefan was protecting Damon because that's all he does with his life. I hate it.
Now that he's not in a relationship with Elena, the fragile human, that's his only other setting. It's like,
it's his job now.
He's only got two settings now. It's Ripper Stefan and protect Damon from his own mistakes at all costs.
God. Rayna ends up stabbing Stefan with the Phoenix sword, which of course means she'll now be tracking him until she kills him. And so Stefan, in order to protect all his friends and family, goes on the run. It sucks because it's right at the moment that Caroline's giving birth to her babies and she's in this very vulnerable situation. It's a nightmare. Once she's stabbed Stefan and heads off, she's like, I've got to go to target number 1. I'm going to go find Bo, that heretic from 1903 who ran with that monster Julian that killed my father. So she goes to the hospital just as the heretics are escaping.
When do we get the flashback showing how Bo got stabbed through the throat?
It might be in this episode. It might be, yes, the flashback to like, it must have been late 1800s because it's not yet 1903.
Yeah.
Somehow, Rayna has tracked down Julian to London. I don't think... Oh, he might have been... No, because the Phoenix Sword didn't exist at that point. It was created after the death of her father. So it's like, I wonder how she tracked him down.
Yeah, but I think at this point she... Oh yeah, how did she find him? She hadn't stabbed him. I guess she just tracked him down.
Ingenuity. Yeah, she followed the trail of bodies. She said, who have I been hearing stories about this man, this white man tearing a path?
Also, we do know from... Who was it? I don't know. Whoever it was that was like, don't let the heretics out. We do know that the heretics had been pretty messy in Europe.
Yeah.
Before they got imprisoned by the Gemini Coven. So, conspicuous.
Maybe she was just, in that region looking for vampire activity and it just so happened she found Julian. But she seemed to know that Julian was there because she's coming straight for him.
Yeah. And they're already like getting ready to get into boxes and travel to the Americas. Julian's like, oh, get inside the box. Nora's like, I'm not going to travel inside some wooden box. And he's like, well, this is the safest way and most inconspicuous way for us to travel. The Huntress is on her way.
That's after they had been leaving an event, like some sort of ale house or whatever. I don't know what you'd call it in London, 1800s. And they were like having fun, debauchery.
Oh, yes!
Bo was singing.
Bo is singing.
They were like having fun. And as he's singing, boom, knife through the back of the throat, a blade peeks out through the front of his neck, and it's like, what just happened? And then you see Rayna behind him with her little sword, and it's like, oh damn. And Julian, of course, recognizes her, and then there's a fight that ensues, and then they escape. And then they're there packing up in boxes because they're specifically running away from Rayna. So they're like trying to get onto this ship, and Julian's like shouting at Nora. He turns around, and there's Rayna waiting for him, stabbed through the chest.
I love this menacing scene as she approaches them at that point, right before they're trying to run away. And I was just like, what are the dimensions of this sword? Because this is a small sword. Because it's specifically the sword her father gave her as a child. He was like, this one's about your size.
It's a short sword, yes.
Which for whatever reason she kept until adulthood, and it became the Phoenix sword. Iconic. But then as she's walking towards them, it's this creepy thing of her dragging it along the ground, and it's causing
drags it on the floor.
Because we can see like the shot of her legs like peeking out from under her long period accurate dress, and the sword dragging next to her. But suddenly when the perspective shifts and we can see her like full body coming towards them, the sword is nowhere near the ground because it's so short.
And it's not like she's leaning over to one side to try and get the sword to touch the ground because it's so short. She's very much standing at a normal angle. Maybe it extends. Maybe it extends in her tracks. It's a telescopic sword. Oh man. But yeah, Bo is essentially collateral damage, even though I think she would have wiped out the Heretics given the opportunity. But she was there for Julian, and she gets Julian at the end. And then the Heretics manage to escape. Cut back to present when Bo, Mary Louise, and Nora are leaving the hospital to try and run away before the huntress gets here.
Taking their sweet time.
Taking their time. He's clutching his throat because he's bleeding from the scar. They round an emergency vehicle, an ambulance, and she literally appears around the corner and stabs him. And it's so funny because Rayna is this really impassive character. She always has the same, like, stern, determined look on her face. Never falters, never sways. Just the same expression as she just, like, coldly, like, stabs this person and traps them in this hellstone. Just like, yes, as all things should be. And then moves on. She's so crazy. I love her. But yeah, she stabs Bo, and Bo becomes trapped in the Hellstone and, for all intents and purposes, dies.
And Nora and Mary Lou are like, well, since we don't have to carry him around anymore, let's vamp speed out of here.
Invisiquay, vamp speed out.
Invisiquay, disappear, run. And I'm like, why didn't you Invisiquay as you were leaving the hospital?
Like,
guys, silly mistakes.
Patch Bo up before you leave Invisiquay and then run off. She'd still be trailing you because Bo was marked, but she'd have a hard time seeing you. That episode ends. The next episode, Moonlight on the Bayou, opens with Rayna chasing down Stefan. Stefan's in a car. He's running off. Valerie is being his girl in the chair. She's coordinating his like escape. She's his oracle.
His Felicity Smoke.
It's Felicity Smoke. She's way too like sarcastic and bitchy to be Felicity. Please, they are like opposites. They are both blonde, but that's where it ends. Then we get the shot of Rayna because Valerie's like, you should be moving. She's tracking you down, and we get the shot of Rayna from the back on a motorcycle, helmet on, Phoenix sword like strapped to her back, leather jacket, and she's like revving the engine and biking after him. She's so cool. Valerie is directing him to, you mentioned it earlier, the safe house that exists in New Orleans that is protected from tracking magic. They're hoping that because locator spells can't find you in there, whatever link she has to you when she's marked you, she will not be able to find you if you're in that safe house. Stefan, for whatever reason, I think it's because his phone battery was dying, he stops at like
a quick stop,
like petrol station.
Yeah.
And he goes inside to buy a charger. He buys the charger, he looks up in the security cameras and sees Rayna approaching, turns around, and Rayna through the window throws the Phoenix sword. And I forget what he runs behind. I guess he like rushes outside the glass door and she throws it and it hits the door from inside and the glass cracks.
Yeah. And then he moves this big object from outside. I don't know what it was, a vending machine or something. Maybe an ice machine.
Something big and machinery, yeah.
He puts it in front of the door and I'm like, clever, slow her down because she'll have to move that out of the way. Unless she flings herself through the glass as well.
She might do it. She might like Olympic swan dive through. on top of the machine.
In that scene, I was like, Stefan, I don't know why you're bothering to pay for this charger. Just compel this person to give it to you. This is life or death.
Just take it.
Like,
I
you'll be
understand
okay.
you're the good guy, but this is ridiculous, dude. I don't think anything bad's gonna happen to this guy if you just steal this charger.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I was fully expecting Rayna to just, like, murder this poor, like, petrol station worker for the fun of it. And she doesn't touch a hair in his head. And it made me realize that as violent as she might be and as, like, magically driven as she is to murder these vampires, she's not unreasonable the way that Connor could sometimes be of the five. Like, Connor was like, I will knife a 16-year-old girl and let her bleed out in this church to draw out the vampires. I will blow up a bar with 3 human children inside if it means I kill 1 hybrid. Whereas Rayna is sometimes like, I will let this vampire walk past me if they're not irritating me because somebody who's been marked with my X is my current target and they're more important.
That's my target. And I think that she obviously has her own, again, the comparisons between the Hunters of the Five and Rayna, the supernatural hunter. She has her own, like, hunter's instinct that's making her a little bit unstable, similar to how the Brotherhood of the Five had, right? Because Jeremy was going off the rails, Connor was going off the rails. She has her own, but it's very different. I think the only time she harms, like, a human person is Bonnie, who is directly in opposition to her, who is like working to stop her from getting to her targets. Yeah. Otherwise, she's not really in the business of like hurting people, which is interesting. But yeah, I love the image of just like relentless hunter pursuing her quarry. When she shows up out of nowhere and throws and she can throw that weapon. She has impeccable aim. I think she says at one point, know something about me, I don't miss.
Oh,
when I
yes,
throw
she
the
does.
sword,
She does.
it will hit you. So cool. Stefan runs off again. He does eventually make it to New Orleans and he gets to the safe house, which is this bar called, it's called like someone's name.
Is it St. James?
Yes, St. James Infirmary. But like, it's a bar. So it's like, okay, what's going on there? Maybe that's a New Orleans cultural thing that like it would make sense if you're from there. I don't know, but I'm not from New Orleans. And he asks for a drink. And someone sits down next to him and slides a drink over. And when the camera tilts, oh, there's Klaus Michelson.
His ex-boyfriend.
His ex-boyfriend. It's time to run into the ex. Oh, what's the song I'm thinking of? You said forever, now I drive alone past your street.
Oh no!
Stefan is stopping at the street. Stefan driver's licensed his way into New Orleans. And it's crazy because I said in the, I forget what episode it was, it might have been the Lily episode, that the last time you see an original is season 5 and the first time you see a heretic is season 6, because we're trying to figure out if an original could compel a heretic. I'd fully forgotten that Klaus shows up in season 7 randomly in this weird crossover they're doing with the originals. So this was news to me. So, Klaus and Stefan get to talking old flames, catching up on old times.
And there's so much that they need to catch up on. It's quite insane. It's like, Klaus is like, how's Caroline? And I'm like, Stefan now needs to not only explain that the two of them are now in love. It's like, sorry, Klaus, your ex is hooked up while you were gone.
Both your exes got together.
He needs to explain to Klaus that, okay, the other side collapsed, but not before we physically resurrected Alaric, Vampalaric from the other side. Then he got turned back into a human through a magical loophole because there was this like anti-witch magic bubble that temporarily encased our town. Once he was human, he then sired children who got magically transplanted into Caroline's vampire womb, so now she's pregnant.
And yeah, we're dating. So that's about all.
Also, Elena's asleep, if you care.
Yeah, not sure if you're worried about your doppelganger still. I know you got other stuff going on in New Orleans. I know you got a child now. Do they know about his child? I don't think so.
I don't think they do.
No, they do.
Do they?
Because Klaus, in this episode, I wasn't going to talk about it, but in this episode, Klaus calls Caroline like a creeper and is like, what's going on, love? And she's like, what the hell are you calling me about? I've got kids to worry about now. I cannot deal with you. And he's like, oh, my own child gives me these problems too. You've got to do A, B, and C. He's like coaching her through like dealing with like newborn babies. And it's like, when was Klaus taking care of his child? And this is keeping it 100.
When he turned Haley into a werewolf for like a whole summer. Like, stuck her in wolf form.
You're so right. You're so right. Oh my god. I need to rewatch the originals and remind myself how horrid this man is.
Awful for that.
Anyway, Stefan's being really cagey about why he's here. He's like, yeah, I heard this was a magical safe house, and I'm just, trying to stay safe. And eventually Klaus gets it out of him that like, oh, you're running from Rayna Cruz. I know that bitch Rayna Cruz. You're not going to bring that trouble here. Okay, get out of my town. So Stefan's on his way to leave. Yeah, Rayna does manage to track him down as he's trying to leave New Orleans now. And they end up in a fight. And Rayna's about to stab him, full death stab. And suddenly Klaus comes out of nowhere, crowbar in hand, and whacks her so hard that she dies. He hits her so hard with a spanner that she flies back like 15 feet, hits the ground, and dies.
Well, he is a 1,000-year-old strong original. If anyone was going to do it.
For sure. It truly just stuck me. I was like, oh, that was enough? Okay. And I mean, she's not resilient, as I said.
Hey, in this universe where falling down the stairs or hitting your head on a table can result in instant death, I will believe that Klaus could whack you with a crowbar and kill you instantly.
I watched it and I was like, because I was also checking the wiki to be like, yeah, I know she dies a number of times. I need to keep track of like, do we see her die all the times that she dies, or has she died previously? And one of the deaths was by Klaus, and I was like, when does Klaus kill her? And that's how I found out there was a crossover, because I'd forgotten. And then they were like, yeah, Klaus. And I went to go see when would Klaus have killed her. And that's the only time they interact. And so I'm like, he hit her so hard with a spanner, she died. Wild.
And then just left her there in the werewolf bayou.
Well, because they were going to try and retrieve her. Stefan was going to move to go do something. And Klaus is like, be careful, mate. You're trespassing on dangerous territory. We're in werewolf country here. Because this all happens on the night of the full moon.
Yeah. And I'm like, Stefan could have vamp rushed, grabbed her body, and run away with Klaus. I'm like, Klaus is the walking cure for werewolf venom. So,
True. Like, he gets bitten once. It's not a big deal.
Since when does Klaus respect the wolves? He's like, ugh, that side of my family. The ghetto side of my family.
There were like a dozen wolves in those woods that were like peering through with their golden eyes. So I think even he's like, listen, they're like jumped up wolves now. They're like the evolved wolves. I don't want that mess today. And they're all super fast too. They're faster than vampires. So
oh yes,
they'll all just like zoom. And they'll all just chomp down on Stefan, and he's gone. Leave the werewolf toxin. They'll rip you to limbs. So, Klaus and Stefan get away, and Klaus is like, alright, clearly you're in a bind here. We know that girlie's coming back. And even though I hate you right now, I used to love you, so I can't let you die. So, I'm gonna introduce you to a witch, and she's gonna sort you out. And they head off into the originals episode that's happening at the same time. Not gonna get into it, because, again, don't want to spoil for the originals, but the long and short of it is a witch creates a paste of herbs, a particular herb that's very rare, and puts it over Stefan's scar so that Rayna won't be able to track him down. And the implication is that so long as you replace this, make a nice fresh paste, and keep like putting this patch over it, you'll be able to like hide from her indefinitely. But the thing is, the herb is rare. At some point in that original's plotline, Stefan then removes the patch intentionally to draw Rayna Cruz in because they need to like mow through a bunch of vampires that are like opposing the main characters at that time. So Rayna comes in with a little phoenix sword and is like, listen, I don't need mess from all of y'all. I'm looking for one man. But they're like, we want to fight. So she's like, all right, murders them all.
I love that. Well, actually, she almost murders them all. One of the antagonists for the Michelsons in that show does manage to kill her.
Like an older vampire.
So that's another one of her lives down.
Someone else manages to get the jump on Rayna and kill her. And then they... Oh, what do they do with her? They just kind of dump her somewhere, right? Because I was trying to track the continuity of episode 14 of Vampire Diaries, episode 15 of Vampire Diaries, because where Klaus kills her and where she wakes up, two different places. Assumedly, after she dies in that originals episode, someone dumps her by the river or next to
the wolves dragged her away. They were like, we don't want the smell of burning corpse by us all night with our heightened noses.
Right, because that's the thing. Every time she comes back, she immolates and then returns as her young self, because the Phoenix Stone, the Phoenix imagery is what's happening. She dies and is reborn from her own ashes, which is really cool. It's a really cool motif.
I gotta say, without getting into the plot of the originals half of the crossover, I love the trope of using a dangerous enemy of yours, or just like a neutral force that is a danger. Sometimes it's like an animal or like a dragon or whatever, to mow through your enemies by using yourself as bait and drawing it towards wherever they are.
Yeah.
It's always so fun to see.
We love a strategic move. We love a bait and switch. After she resurrects from that death, she wakes up in this like bank by a lake or by a river or something. There's a tent there, and there are clothes hanging from a little makeshift clothesline. So that's why I was like, what's happening here? And it's not the clothes she was wearing when she was chasing down Stefan, because she had a leather jacket then, and the Phoenix sword is also there, just waiting for her. So she grabs that too and runs off. So I didn't watch the originals episode. Like, I just truly just like went and got the gist of it and left.
I wanted to see Rayna do the aforementioned trope. Oh, you know what a good example of it is? We briefly discussed it last night. You watched The Cabin in the Woods when she hits purge and releases all the horror creatures and monsters out to like destroy the people running the facility,
so that they can then get out. Which, riskiest of that type of move I've ever seen, because it's like, how are you now gonna escape through this bloodbath? Plot armor will do that, I guess. She wakes up in New Orleans, she gets these clothes, she grabs a sword, she runs off. At this point in the story, there's this character called Penny Aries, who you don't have to worry about because she truly does not matter. But she's like Matt's new love interest.
Oh,
she's like new to the supernatural world.
I completely forgot her name. I was like, who are you talking about? Who is this OC self-insert Mary Sue that you're now bringing into the story? And then you said Matt's love interest, and I was like, oh yeah.
I truly, we'll get into it hopefully in a Matt episode about how, like, what the hell was going on with this character. But the gist of it is that she's recently found out about vampires. Matt is like running her through the ropes of like, how do they work? How do you kill them? So they're busy having a little vampire hunt / date. It's very strange. It's like an early morning jog / vampire hunt / date.
Ooh, I just thought of another example of that trope. It's the iconic scene from Jurassic World with Bryce Dallas Howard outrunning the T-Rex in heels as she leads it towards her friends to help fight the Indominus Rex.
I've not seen any of the Jurassic World movies. So
Have you not?
No. Intentionally.
Well, if this makes it into the final cut, I'm sure some people will know the scene I'm talking about. It's people laugh at it because they're like, Bryce Dallas Howard is like in slow motion, running in her high-heeled shoes, and somehow managing to keep herself ahead
From
of
a
the Tyrannosaurus
dinosaur?
Rex. Because it's like, oh, the T-Rex is like this iconic dinosaur just like in life and also in the franchise. So it's like, oh, we have this new dinosaur that's a danger. Let's let the T-Rex out of its cage and lead it towards this dinosaur so that they fight because they're all territorial. So she's the one who goes to do it, and she manages to run, leading this Tyrannosaurus Rex on her human legs in high-heeled shoes. She's able to stay ahead of it long enough to lead it to where this other dinosaur is so that it can fight this dinosaur.
The only things I've seen of that movie are the image of Chris Pratt being Dinosaur Jesus, and then where he's like holding the hand out because he can speak to the dinosaurs or whatever. I've not seen these movies. And the other one is the clip of Katie McGrath being
shame.
killed in the most
no, she didn't deserve that.
way. No, apparently she asked for it. Apparently Katie McGrath said, if I'm going to die in this movie, I need it to be the biggest spectacle. I'm sure she loved it, but she gets grabbed by this one creature and like tossed back and forth, and then she's thrown up.
It's like two pterodactyls are fighting over her. Like one snatches her up, then another one snatches her away, and they fight over her. They fly over this like water enclosure, and then an aquatic dinosaur like leaps out of the water and eats them and her.
It's so bad. Oh god, those are the only things. I truly was like, 1, they're trying to redo Jurassic Park. 2, it has Chris Pratt as the main character. Nothing about this is anything I want. So I just never watched them. So they kill this one vampire. They struggle to because Penny doesn't know what she's doing. And then they're like laughing about it, being like, hee hee ha. And then like 6 other vampires show up because they're like, that was our friend. And now we're going to kill you.
It's what's his face? I've actually forgotten his name. We were just talking about. It's Julian's little leftovers.
Yeah. This is Julian's taking over the town.
The like 6 other leftovers from Julian's little club show up, and they're like, "Oh, this is our time." One of them is Crystal, the one who Damon hooked up with when he thought Elena had been burned to a crisp.
Oh, I forgot about that too. Just so much happens in this season that I just don't care about.
Yes.
So they show up and they're like, "We're gonna eat you," and then suddenly they're all getting shot in the backs and none of them are reacting. They all just get shot sequentially and die. And it's like, oh,
suddenly
okay.
There's no vamp speed.
But I guess, Rayna's got the agility to like shoot really quickly.
I mean, she can only shoot as fast as the gun can operate. That's the thing with speedsters. Like,
yeah, but it's like maybe she can load up that crossbow real quick.
Maybe was she using a crossbow, not even a gun? Girl,
I actually don't know. It might have been a gun.
I feel like the crossbow would have been less believable.
See, this is the thing. We need to bring back the Chinese repeating crossbow that had...
What was that thing that Van Helsing had? It was like the machine gun equivalent of a crossbow.
It's basically that, but like not so ridiculous. There was a crossbow which had a cartridge on top where it's like when a crossbow bolt fires, a new one falls through gravity and is fed into the space where it sits, and then you just have to rack up again and shoot. So time to get into that shit. But, whomst am I? She mows down all these vampires. And then they say, "Oh my god, thank you very much." And she's like, "Yeah, I saved your lives. So that means you owe me one now." And they're like, "Oh, all right." So she's like, "Come with me." And then they go. And they essentially begin this like coerced mentorship. It's very Connor and Jeremy from season 4, which is like, you're gonna learn how to hunt vampires properly, whether you want to or not. She grabs one of the vampires who didn't fully die, brings him into like a restaurant or some sort of like enclosed inner like building. She's got the sword on him and she's trying to extract information from him. She's still trying to get, where's Stefan Salvatore? Matt hears this and is like, oh, immediately becomes discomforted. And Rayna's doing this thing where she's like, watch closely. You gotta know how to pressure them. You've gotta know what you're working with. Keep them at a distance. Remember they're beneath you, but they can still be useful. For example...
Oh, yes. She compares them to wild animals. She's like, a vampire is like a wild animal. It's dangerous, but it's still beneath you. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I think of animals as being beneath me necessarily. Some of them are pretty cool. Like, I can't grow back lost limbs is all I'm saying.
Like maybe geckos are far cooler than I am, and that's fine. I can't make my body glow iridescent colors and match my background. I don't know, maybe squids and octopi are far more evolved than we are.
I don't have bioluminescence or biological immortality.
I saw a fish it was a TikTok clip that was passing by. It was the same kind of like Nat Geo shit I used to see as a kid. That was like, there's a fish at the bottom of the ocean that uses its flippers and its like underside to burrow little divots into the seabed and make markings in a perfect circle. And then keep going, make an inner circle, and then make a little hollow in the center to lure in the female of the species to be like, here is a perfect place for us to mate and then drop our eggs, and then like, I'll take care of them. And I'm like, that tiny little fish at the bottom of the seabed innately and instinctively understands geometry in a way that took me years to learn. Like, maybe we're not that cool. All this to say, we're getting sort of a sense of how Rayna views vampires, of how she operates, and how that's gonna influence, essentially, her new protégés, Matt and Penny. Matt leads Damon to Rayna and Penny, and then Damon and Rayna are having a back and forth. And then Matt turns and shoots Rayna with the stake gun.
Matt shoots her with a stake gun, and as that briefly stuns her, Damon vamp speeds over to her and rips her heart out.
Penny goes over to like clamber at Rayna and be like, oh no, why would you shoot her? What the hell? And Matt's like, Stefan's a friend, so... not gonna do all that.
We should have kept a count of all of Rayna's lives.
So, it's Enzo kills her at the beginning. It's Klaus who then whacks her so hard she dies. It's the character from the originals who kills her, so that's 3. And then this is the 4th time now that she's been killed
Ah.
in the space of this season. Matt then tells Damon the lowdown. Damon's like, go away, I'll deal with this. So Matt and Penny leave. Damon then off screen takes Rayna's body and chops it into pieces and puts the pieces into separate little baggies and then drops those baggies in a large hole that he's dug into the ground in this place where they are.
Because he's trying to figure out, like, how can I kill her so she stays dead?
Yeah, he's experimenting.
Which, I mean, if it were me, I wouldn't have kept her pieces together. I would have been like, maybe if I keep them separate, she won't be able to
Ship
regenerate.
them in opposite directions. 5 different delivery trucks going to the different corners of the world. That's the sort of this. Always, every time Damon has to do some kind of like supernatural science, he's never doing it right. He's always doing something that's really like simple or dumb. He just doesn't understand the assignment. So he puts all the pieces in a pit, and then he gets like an apple or an acorn or something, because now he needs to do this smarmy scene where he's eating something while he's talking to Rayna.
I think it's nuts.
Yeah, he's eating a bunch of nuts, because then when he speaks with her, he keeps throwing the shells into the hole, and I'm just like, I'm with Rayna in this situation. I hope she jumps out and kills you, just for this nut situation. Like, what the hell are you doing?
Orena was after my man Stefan, so I could not take her side.
I'm kind of like, damn, girl. You know, you've got a hard rap, you've got to do what you got to do. And Stefan jumped in the way. This could have been Damon.
I love her, but I'm like, there's a bunch of vampires I'd rather you kill first. Go kill Enzo, girl. Leave Stefan alone.
Enzo's not marked. And it's like, how much of that is in her control, right? Because she's supernaturally wired to go after the vampire she's marked. And we'll get into that later, actually, because that becomes an important crux of her story. But for now, the pile of bagged body parts catches alight, just as Rayna always catches alight after she's died, turns to ash, and is reborn. It happens off screen, so we don't really see how it happens and where the plastic goes, but when we cut back to her, she's just her naked self in the pit with like nothing else in there.
Then Damon throws her down some clothes. Elena's clothes, apparently. He's like, they'll fit you because you look exactly like my girlfriend. And I'm like, this is the second time he says
That's not how that works.
The first time he sees her, he's like, you look just like my girlfriend and her 3 doppelgangers. And I'm like, she does. I guess she kind of looks like Nina Dobrev, yeah.
Kinda.
But then when he gives her the clothes, I'm like, her face would not determine
her body
what
shape,
her shirt
her body
size is,
type,
her
like
pants size. What's going on?
This is an insane thing to say. I feel like they just really wanted to make that joke another time because Elena's not here and we've got to like address it somehow. And it's like, we might as well take advantage of the fact that this actress vaguely looks like Nina Dobrev. He then begins this thing where it's like, well, I don't really want to kill you, but like, I kind of have to kill you because you're just going to go after my brother. And she's like, yeah, well, you know, I didn't choose the hunter life. The hunter life chose me. And he's like, yeah, so I'm recently reformed. Starts spitting complete lies.
He lists all his negative, well, not all. He lists a few of his negative traits. He's like, I'm a narcissist. I'm selfish. I'm impulsive. And he's like, but I was reformed. It didn't last, but I was reformed for a while. So there's hope for you too.
It's like, I was changed by the power of love.
Elena fixed me and, you know, she made me better. Maybe if you were in love, you could be better.
So he's like, damn, was there ever a Mr. Hunter? And then that
Hunter
like,
x Hunter?
That That's really good, actually. Not what the show's about at all, but yeah.
I've never watched the show, if you couldn't tell.
I've seen bits and pieces and I've heard through osmosis. Yeah, that gives her pause and it's like, oh, so she was involved with someone at some point. And he's like, see, so it is possible. And she's like, yeah, well, he was a vampire and I killed him. So now what? And it's like, what does that mean? And you have to go, well, I can't be that she just like encountered a vampire and then dated him. That would be a running clock. How long before like your hunter instincts take over and you want to kill this vampire? Also, she did like fundamentally hate vampires from day one. I doubt she would date a vampire knowing he was a vampire.
Yeah.
You know? So there's the implication that he became a vampire and then it was this tragic thing where it's like, well, now I have to kill him.
Which is the same thing that happened with Connor, Jordan's friend, in his backstory. He mentions that I had a friend, he became a vampire. He said he would keep it under control. He couldn't, so I killed him. given how happy Connor Jordan is to go to extremes, I'm like, that's your side of the story. Did he actually slip up, or did like the veins appeared on his eyes one day and you were like, there we go, like, nope, you're gonna kill someone.
Gotta go. Did you take the Bill Forbes line of thinking where it's like, you better not drink a single drop of blood or I will kill you? It's like, okay, then I desiccate, I guess. But yeah, she's like, yeah, sorry, that's in the past, and I'm gonna get your brother one way or another, so you might as well just get me out of here and I'll be on my merry way. And he's like, damn, I guess I got nothing to do. I think he grabs her gun and then shoots her in the pit.
While this is happening with Damon and Rayna, Bonnie and Enzo are at the armory, which is where we find out how the mechanics of Rayna's longevity and resurrective power.
Because up until this point, they've thought she's just like immortal. She just will keep coming back.
Yeah.
But through the armory, because Alex St. John, as we learn, Enzo's distant cousin however many generations removed, is like, we know about Rayna Cruz. We're trying to get her and keep her captured in this place. And we know her backstory. Come into this large room that we have that has everything about her. And you go in and you see there are these 8 open coffins arranged on like raised daises with these wrinkled, decomposing men. And it's like 5 of them, or like 6 of them. No, 5 of them are all decomposed, and 3 of them are still fresh.
I think it's 2.
And then
I think
1 goes down while they're talking.
Oh, 1 goes down while she's burning inside the plastic bags.
Yes, because while they're talking about the fact that these are the bodies of the shamans who gave up their lives so that Rayna could live a much longer one, each time she dies, one of these everlastings.
I think it is 2 left, because they say these are the 8 everlastings, and Bonnie's like, more like 2 everlastings, because 6 of them look pretty lasted.
So it was 3 just before they went in, and Alex is like, we've lost another one, what the hell's going on? And then she runs off to go sort it out.
Once they've explained that these shamans gave their lives, and Rayna Cruz, every time she dies, she resurrects at the expense of one of these bodies here, which I guess means the reason that she was able to live long enough to hunt Julian and the Heretics is because she was like dying of old age, like maybe twice, and then coming back.
Yes.
In her young body.
Assumedly, her first 2 deaths were just like natural deaths.
Yeah.
Or she could have been killed somewhere, who knows? But it has been like 200 years, so you have to assume she died of old age a couple of times there.
Yeah, and then Bonnie like clandestinely texts Damon and she's like, Rayna's not immortal. She has 2 lives left. And then Damon's like, okay,
and
cool.
Damon completely...
He sees that text, he's like, okay, never mind. I can just kill you now. We don't have to make small talk. And that's when he shoots her in the pit. And then when he does that, Enzo, who's still in the room with Bonnie, sees one of the final 2 everlastings start to like shrivel up and look like a corpse. And he like turns on Bonnie, is like, I can see you texting there. Like, what are you up to?
Bonnie's not trying to hide it though, so it's like, I don't think so. She's very openly texting, and when he says, what's going on? She looks up at him with like, are you speaking to me? So it's like,
she's like, oh, do you feel bad because I lied and deceived you to get what I wanted? I can't imagine how that feels.
Yeah, sucks, doesn't it? I hate them in this season. Oh my god. Yeah, so then he then tells her, you can't kill all the everlastings because once the last one dies, because they're linked, because she's linked to the stone, all the souls in the stone die with her.
And everyone mocked
dies with her, which means if she dies permanently, Stefan will also die. So now she calls Damon to be like, don't kill her, Stefan will die.
Enzo also adds that every time she dies and one of the everlastings allows her to resurrect, she comes back stronger, which I thought was a really cool failsafe. I was like, look, these shamans were doing the things. They were not messing the Brotherhood around. Of the 5 were like the alpha test. We're going to upgrade.
And then they were like, we see you, our sisters from another clan, but we're going to iterate. We're going to build on this. We're just going to make it a little bit better. And then they just threw all the arsenal into it. It's so good. Black and Indigenous unity, man. Let's work together. Anyway, so Bonnie really quickly goes, don't kill her, Stefan will die. And at this point, Damon has already buried Rayna's body, hoping that she'll resurrect, suffocate under mounds of earth, and then die her final death. So now he has to rush and scramble to dig her out from this shallow grave. And it's this really comical shot from like below of Damon clearly not actually digging, just kind of moving his hands like a puppy dog trying to swim. And it's like, this is really awkward and cringy. And he eventually digs her up. She looks very dead. He's like doing CPR, and then he feeds her his vampire blood, and she like coughs up all the dirt that has naturally been inhaled into her lungs, wakes up on her final life.
And I was like, is that how CPR works? I feel like if your lungs were actually full of dirt, CPR wouldn't work.
Maybe he was just trying to pound the dirt out.
Maybe.
I don't know what his plan was. Stefan is the medical of the two brothers. Damon doesn't know shit. Actually, it's funny enough, because this is the season, we'll get to it, but like, Stefan is put in a situation where his medical knowledge becomes very important, and I was like, oh, it's nice to always touch back on that. It's really cool. She says, thanks for saving my life. For that, I'm going to give you a head start. So take that, because I don't give it to anybody. And so he's busy trying to like distract her, I think, because the armory people are on the way. I think he asks her about her old love interest again to like try and distract her from what she's about to do. And she says, yeah, someone turned him into a vampire and then I killed him. And that was that. So this is the life I'm living. This is the situation you're dealing with. There's nothing you can do to change that. And as she's about to go after him, armory goons show up and shoot her with tranquilizer darts. And she goes down. And it's like, the armory varies in how effective they are from one episode to another. Sometimes it's like Enzo can compel like 5 armory guys to come with him and go do whatever. And then another time it's like they're able to move in unison and just like take down the most powerful huntress. Also, it's like the armory has witches. Because at some point it's like, the armory's going to do a locator spell and find whoever. And it's like, why are there witches working for the armory? Also, where are they? You keep hearing about them. Where are you keeping them? Why are they so invested in the armory's mission? Which is like, what is the armory's mission? Just to keep supernatural stuff in their house? Okay, now what?
Them having witches at their command felt very Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the comics. Because in the comics, S.H.I.E.L.D. does have superhumans working as agents. They have psychics. Before House of M depowers most of the mutants.
Sure.
There's like a whole bunch of telepaths who work for S.H.I.E.L.D. in their psychic division. They have spellcasters. I think in Avengers Underground, Nico Minoru has to go up against like a bunch of nameless, faceless necromancers who work for S.H.I.E.L.D. And it's like, is the armory trying to be like this Buffy initiative, but with like
they are the
S.H.I.E.L.D.
initiative, yeah. But it's like, unlike the initiative, it's never established how they're managing to amass any sense of like the knowledge and the means and the assets that they have. It's like, do you have leverage on some witches? Do they work for the mission on like of their own volition? Why would they wanna like why would they want this random human faction to have hold of these supernatural like talismans and artifacts that should be with like the witches? It's like what's going on here? I don't know. Very strange world building decision. And it's like, it's something that could have been cool, especially with all the stuff that happens with Matt. I feel like that could have been built up more, but it's just like a mess that's like not relevant at the end of the day. Literally, the armory's introduced this season and ceases to be a thing this season. Because in season 8, when you talk about the armory, they're talking about the building. Where are the forces of the armory? Where do they go? I understand that like Alex is gone at that point, and Virginia is in a mental hospital, and it's like Enzo doesn't care. So it's like there's no one to run the armory, but Rick starts running the armory. Did they run out of funding? It's like, we can't pay all these goons, so we're just gonna let them all go? With all the knowledge they have?
I mean, jumping ahead for your sake, if we assume that all the armory's operatives, which couldn't be that many, were inside the building when Bonnie sealed them in there with whatever was coming out of the locked cave, then they all just died then?
You're so right. They all got eaten by the siren. That's wild.
Who still wasn't full? Who still needed Damon and Enzo to feed her for the entire summer between seasons 7 and 8?
We love a girl with a healthy appetite. Listen. So the armory takes down Rayna and they get her back in, I guess, their armory. There's another flash forward in this episode. where she's finally got Stefan, right? Because in the flash forward, she's been chasing down Stefan for so long. Stefan comes to the news station because Caroline and Damon have been snatched and runs into Matt outside. And Stefan's like, what's going on? And Matt is like, I don't know. Damon called me. Like, they've got Caroline inside, but we're trying to figure out, like, what's going on. And as Stefan turns away, Matt vervain injections him in the throat and takes him down. And then it's like, huh? Matthew? What's going on? And then he looks up at a security camera and is like, we've got him. My part is done in all of this. And she's like, all right, you can leave now. Have a nice life. And Matt goes off. I can't remember if it's in this episode or a prior episode. Matt in one of the earlier episodes frees Caroline and Caroline thinks he's come to her rescue. And then Matt is like, we got what we wanted. We just are drawing Stefan in. And she's like, you're working with her? Which is like very early on, you learn in the future, Matt is working with this mysterious huntress. And it's like, oh God, what happened to Matt? Guess we'll find out, I guess. And so
we care so little.
I just...
In fact, we care even less when we find out what his motivations are. We're like, Matt.
Oh my God. I was so mad. We'll talk about it. So Rayna's got Stefan in this news station. She's like, be honest. Who did you come here for? Your brother or for Caroline? Because this season there's this whole conflict with Stefan that like he's trying to build his life with Caroline, but no matter what, he will drop everything to go for Damon at the expense of himself, at the expense of his life and his loved ones. He's going to go and rescue Damon. It's the reason he's on the run for 3 years. It's the reason their relationship collapses. Rayna's just taunting him about that, I guess. When he doesn't answer, she's like, fine, keep your secrets, like Frodo from Lord of the Rings. I don't know if you've seen that meme, but she says, listen, Stefan, I don't want to kill you. I think you're a pretty chill dude. All of the vampires I've hunted, you're like really decent. How about you switch it over to somebody who actually deserves to die? How about you trade places with the person who this mark was actually meant for? And Stefan hears this and is like, oh, you're trying to pit me against my brother. Well, I won't let that happen. And it's like, God damn it, Stefan. This man will be the death of you. Then Damon appears from over her shoulder from out of the shadows. He's been untied and like, he still seems to be under the effect of werewolf toxin.
Yeah.
Because he's like toppling over and woozy. And he's like, actually, it was my idea. And that's how that episode ends. Effectively, Rayna and, well, Damon made the plan, but Rayna is like, I don't want to kill you because you seem chill. If you're able to transfer the mark from you to Damon and then I kill Damon, my part in this is complete and I can leave and you can live the rest of your life. And Damon's like, bro, this is my fault to begin with. Finally taking accountability. Lord knows it's 15 episodes too late. But I'm going to take one for the team because I'm suicidal anyways because Elena's not here. Stefan's like, can you help me with my ropes so we can do this then? Let's get it over with. Damon goes over to help him. And Rayna's like, oi, I'm watching. She's holding out her gun or her crossbow. I can't remember at this point. So Damon starts to slowly untie Stefan. And the moment he's loose enough, Stefan knocks Damon back.
I think he might throw Damon into Rayna. It all happens so fast.
And also at this point, I think we're in... The flash forward is now present day, and they start flashing back to 3 years ago. It's very strange. There's a transition point where they do a montage of, like, collecting the story as has been told and catching you up to present. And then suddenly we're 3 years in the future, and we're looking back. It's so weird. Yeah, he throws Damon into Rayna and then grabs the Phoenix sword. And then when Damon gets up, he uses the ropes to strangle Rayna.
Stefan vamp speeds away. Rayna, while Damon is choking her, she picks up a tranquilizer.
And then Rayna jabs him with the tranquilizer because Damon's pretty weak. So Stefan's gone. She's tying Damon up again. And she's like, you know, you were willing to take the mark onto you, have it transferred onto you with magic. That's pretty noble of you because... As you know, I'm like mortal. I have a mortal lifespan. I won't live forever. That's when she shows him she has a scar up her arm that she's stitched up. It's like, at some point I'm going to get old and this is my last life. So I have like a mortal lifespan. There's a ticking time clock on me. As soon as I die, anyone who's marked is going to die with me, which means you would die right around the time that Elena's waking up. And you were going to give that up to protect your brother's life. And then Damon has an expression on his face that makes it very clear he was not aware of this aspect of the situation. He did not realize that Rayna would die in this lifetime. And the moment she tells him this, and I think she does it on purpose because she seems to be speaking very coyly, but I can't tell because Rayna's so impassive. She could have been very serious. It then prompts Damon to be like, maybe actually I don't want to do this. Maybe actually I want to live. And it's like, that launches him into this spiral of trying to find, quote, another way to do this that both relieves Stefan of the mark, but doesn't have him die when Rayna dies. And it's like, where? Where are we finding this option? Where are we getting this plan? Because the longer you're like scrambling to find some kind of option, the closer Stefan is to death. I hate that man. I hate that man down. He sucks. But she stitches herself up and she goes after Stefan. She resumes the hunt. She has Caroline's phone because they've kidnapped her, right? And calls him and is like, listen, we're linked. Because of that link, I can feel you and I can kind of see what you're doing. You're making a lot of dumb decisions and you're being really obvious. I am tracking you down. She's like almost helping him get away from her.
Yeah, the first time that she says that, we were not aware that she could see through the eyes of her would-be victims and like actually get glimpses of where they... I was like, you're clairvoyant in the literal sense?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
You're walking through your marked vampires. It's really dope. And it's this interesting new dynamic that now, following this event in the newsroom that forms where she's like, I don't want to kill you. In fact, I'm going to do my best to get you to get away from me because when I get to you, I'm going to have to kill you.
She explains that while she was under lock and key in the armory, which I guess in between the flash forward at the start of the season where it's like, oh, Stefan's mark opened up 3 years later. That means the huntress is out and about.
Yeah.
So before that happens, in between that and her getting caught by the armory after Damon is like, oh, can't kill her. She's on her final life and she'll take Stefan with her. She's just been like trapped there for 3 years.
She's just been in the armory.
She says while she was there, she was warging, as you put it. Game of Thrones reference for those of you who don't know.
Yeah.
She was warging Stefan and just seeing like this brief time of happiness that he was having with Caroline.
No, not with Caroline.
Oh no,
because he doesn't
with
go
Valerie.
back.
Yes,
Stefan
he was on the
spends
run.
those 3 years on the run with Valerie.
She's like, I sort of bonded with you. It's so weird. And Stefan is understandably creeped out.
Because it's very much from one side. Stefan's not aware of this until now, but it's like from her end, it's like, oh, my old friend Stefan, what's he up to today? Let me switch on the TV. I think she says, there's no TV in the armory,
there's no TV in the armory.
This is my entertainment.
She's like, you got me through it. You were this like thing that helped me with the torturous boredom that I was enduring.
Right.
And Stefan's like,
and she's like, I learned who you are as a person, and like I've learned that you're actually a really like good person at heart despite your vampirism, and I've also learned that what minuscule time you spent away from Mystic Falls and away from your brother was the freest and happiest you felt in a while. You were almost grateful that Damon had coffined himself.
oh yes, she can also feel what her would-be victims feel. She's an empath as well. All of this makes her, and I can't get too deeply into it because you haven't finished Buffy, but I will say that a lot of Rayna's makeup as this vampire huntress with all these superpowers, it's very similar to the mechanics of the Slayer in the Buffyverse.
I mean, you can't look at Rayna and her whole vibe and not think of Buffy, right? Like,
Yeah.
apart from like their personalities, she is very much Buffy. Supernaturally chosen to hunt vampires, imbued with strength and agility to match them.
Also has like her low tier psychic powers that help her.
Like, you can't not make the comparison. But also the sort of stuff that she's talking about, the empathic bit, this like innate understanding she has of Stefan's psyche and Stefan's relationship with his brother is because of her link to the Phoenix Stone. The stone that's designed to put you through this psychic hell that makes you like work out all your traumas and your sins. Through that stone, she has gained an understanding of Stefan and all his stuff. And she's like, the stone is urging me all the time to tell you that you've not learned your lesson from the time you spent in the stone. Because the lesson the stone tries to teach Stefan is that if he is to live a fulfilling and good life, he has to let Damon go. And never once does he heed it from then till the end of the show.
Which, wild that the stone is talking to her and is so invested in Stefan's mental health.
The stone is like incarceration, but also rehab, you know?
Yes.
I hold both in my hands. Because it's like, it could be punishment, but also, like, work your shit out, fam. You know? Through adversity, you will learn humility.
And look at that. The Phoenix / Hellstone, an ideal prison system.
So this episode, this chase that she's doing with Stefan, Damon busy trying to, quote, find some other way to figure this out.
Valerie shows up and siphons the werewolf venom out of him, which I'm like, oh, I wish these heretics had been around long ago so we didn't have to run into clouds every time.
Exactly. And Valerie's like, okay, we're gonna do the transfer for the scar. And Damon's like, about that. And then the car ride the whole way trying to get to Stefan is Valerie chewing Damon's head off because he doesn't want to take the scar off anymore. And she's telling the same speech that Rayna's telling Stefan, Valerie's telling Damon that, like, for once in your life, make the selfless choice. She's like echoing the stuff that he went through in the Phoenix Stone of like, it's always about you. It's always about what you want, and damn everyone else. It's because his Phoenix Stone stuff was like trying to get back home and killing those Confederate deserters as well as the women who housed them, that maiden mother crone trio that was in that house. All that stuff is permeating through the season where it's like, Stefan, if you are to live any kind of fulfilling life, you have to leave Damon behind. Damon, if you are to be any semblance of a decent person, live beyond yourself. Live beyond your selfish, narcissistic desires. You've got to stop. And he doesn't. So everyone's converging on this airport. Nora and Enzo confront Alex St. John, who was instructed to meet them there for some exchange.
Rayna escaped the armory. Alex and John thinks that Enzo let her out, but he didn't.
Right.
She sends Nora after Enzo with Mary Louise as like the damsel in distress who is being poisoned by magical pills that were made of Rayna's blood while she was in captivity.
They suppress witch magic, but taken long enough, they will kill you.
Alex has lied and said that, oh, Nora, if you get Enzo back, I will give you all the information you need to cure Mary Lou.
She just was very to the letter about what she said.
Yep.
She says, I didn't say I'd give you the cure. I said I'd give you everything I know.
She was like, I'll give you the info.
And what I know is, time to say goodbye, bitch. Your girlfriend's dying.
Which is such a horrible move.
Very Atticus Shane, where it's like, I said I'd tell you everything I know about your family. Your family's dead.
I think it's like the third time it's happened in this show. The first time is Klaus in season 2, where it's like, Elijah, don't kill me, during like the sacrifice to turn him into a proper hybrid and break the curse.
I'll reunite you with our family.
I'll reunite you with our family. Then afterwards, the next day, it's like, psych, what I meant was I'll dagger you and leave you with the rest of them.
Which he didn't lie. It's talking about Buffy. It's very Buffy, where it's like the prophecy is exactly literal and accurate. The words must be paid attention to. Stefan is on the phone with Damon and Valerie, who are still on their way. Stefan's like, what's happening? I've still got the mark. Like, what's the situation? Rayna's like on her way to kill me. And Damon's like, listen, I've got a plan. And he's like, what's the plan? What are you doing now? And Damon's like, don't worry about it. Stefan's like, tell me straight, are you not taking the sky anymore? Damon's like, I'm figuring something out. And Stefan's like, no, I want to hear you say it. Tell me you're not taking the scar anymore, so I know where we stand.
The phone call ends, and then as they realize they're running out of time and Rayna is gaining on Stefan wherever they are, then Damon's like, okay, screw it, fine, give me the mark. I'm Damon Salvatore. I'll figure something out. And I'm like, God. Except you never do. So it's funny that you would use that line.
Literally never do. Someone else is solving your problems.
That should be a Bonnie line. Like, I'm Bonnie Bennett. I'll figure something out.
Right, exactly that. Every time he said something like that twice in the season. He says that, and then he also, I think it's Valerie afterwards, where he's like, I'm a persuasive guy. I end up getting up what I want one way or another. It's like, yeah, you tell Bonnie to do it. And then Bonnie has to do it because for some reason she cares about this friendship. You don't get anything done except your friends in danger and people killed. This is not a Damon episode. It's not a Damon episode. Valerie tries the transfer spell. It is proceeding. It is cut short when Rayna appears behind Stefan and stabs him through the chest. He, for all intents and purposes, dies, and his soul is once again entrapped in the stone.
And I guess at that point, Nora runs away.
She's running away with Mary Louise. Enzo convinces Nora to use the leverage to be like, bring Mary Lou with you and meet us at this airport for the exchange, so that they're at a neutral location.
Okay.
So she does hand over Mary Lou at that point, and Nora and Mary Lou run off and hop into their Dodge Charger, which is just kind of there. Which, it's a private airport, so I'm sure rich people cars are just like lying around a dime a dozen. And they're driving off. Rayna, who's just trying to take care of her Mark Stefan, goes, all right, scanning, next available vampire, and starts beelining straight for those two. I think she gets a car too. She just grabs a car that's lying around and chases after them.
Was she in a car? Did she manage to aim at them from a moving car? She's good.
She says, when I throw, I don't miss.
Yep.
So she throws that Phoenix sword through their back windshield and it strikes the dashboard of the car.
Yeah.
So that if at least she can't follow them because they're not marked, she can follow that sword.
Yes.
In fact, while she's chasing Stefan, who has the sword with him, stabs the sword into a truck and then has the truck go another way while he speeds off in the opposite direction. And then Rayna has to crash the truck guy to retrieve her sword and then go back after Stefan. She's like, you owe this guy a box truck. It's like, Rayna, please. You're insane, girl. This is the era in which there's more personality to her. She isn't just like stone-faced hunter.
Yeah.
She's like bantering with Stefan in this really cool way. And I think that's her most prominent connection, at least until the final arc for her.
She's a lot of fun there. Yeah. I guess because she bonded with Stefan while she was being a voyeur.
Right.
She one-way bonded with him.
She's like, this is my bestie I'm chatting with. I can let my guard down.
It's the TVD equivalent of like Stan Twitter forming this parasocial relationship with an idol who has no idea who you are.
She's a Stefani. That's brilliant.
But Nora and Mary Lou are like driving off with the Phoenix sword like embedded in their car. And they're like, okay, it's okay. We're going to get away from her. We'll be on the run forever. And Mary Lou is like, no, Nora, I'm dying and there is no saving me.
These pills have killed me.
Like, you can get away. And then she sees that when Rayna threw the sword into the car, she nicked Nora's arm. So now Nora is marked. And she's like, well, I guess I'm dead too. And then Mary Lou, being selfless because that's the only time she ever has a soul when it's concerning her girlfriend, she's like, no, I'm going to use my power to destroy this damn sword.
If it's the last thing I do.
At which point I was like, pause. This was something that a witch could have done. And when there were 6 of you, 6 spell-casting heretics, you never thought to try and destroy the Phoenix Stone with magic.
I think Nora says it's too much, it will kill you. It will take all of you to absorb. Because I think she's like absorbing the magic from the stone to destroy it.
Oh, is she absorbing it? Is that why? Okay.
Yeah, you see the red-orange of the mana burn.
But I mean, there were 6 of them.
Yeah, true.
And we've seen that you can absorb magic as a siphon/heretic. You can absorb magic and use it so that it's like a...
But I mean, the whole time, they needed the sword, right? They needed the stone to bring back Julian. After that, probably should have destroyed it.
Yeah.
But I guess they were worried about what would happen. They didn't seem to know in this last moment. So I'm not sure what the, like, motivation was here. I guess it was truly just like we're going out in a blaze of glory, which by all means,
we're
I guess
going down.
romantic.
We're gonna try and take as much from this huntress as we can. Nora joins the spell and she's like, I'm dying too. Well, technically she's like, I'm marked for death. And Mary Lou is like, I'm doing this so that you survive. And then Nora's like, I don't want to survive without you. So let's.
There's no life without you. Oh. And she starts reciting that poem that Mary Lou was reciting in the hospital.
I was like,
So
you know what?
cute.
You two grew on me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to like you, but I did. Maybe it's the queerness. Maybe if you'd been a straight couple, I wouldn't have cared.
You know, we ride for our own. I love those lesbians down.
Also, mean girl lesbians was not a trope that I'd ever seen before. They were a lot of fun.
Iconic. You get to be a mean girl and it's never about a man. Brilliant.
Yes!
Exactly what I want. But yeah, they do the spell. It's like heats up. And then there's like an explosion as this thing shatters.
The stone like cracks, and I think Rayna can feel the spell happening because she's like, no!
She gives a very loud, again, like she did when Julian was about to compel her to kill her father. There's an explosion, and then the car explodes, and then they sort of veer to the side, and I think they flip over. I thought they went off a cliff. I guess I bought
We were
so
thinking
deep
of
into the
Thelma and Louise
of it. I really was like, they were full Thelma and Louise. No, they were just like on the like grass next to the runway.
Remember the cliff, for what it's worth. I also remember the cliff, and I've never even watched Thelma and Louise, so I don't know what that's about. I think in the next episode, somebody, I think it's Damon, makes a quip about Thelma and Mary Louise.
You gotta say that to Valerie, and I'm like, all right, you get one, but get to business. You've got shit to do. But yes, the sword explodes. They believe explodes with their last chance to get back Stefan, because Stefan's soul was in that sword. And that's how that episode ends. The next episode opens through various, again, concurrent storylines. We find out that the destruction of the stone did not mean the destruction of the souls contained. In fact, because it was a prison, breaking the prison means they all scattered. Rayna says, think of that explosion by the airport as the center point of the blast. Vampire souls have scattered in all directions, and because all her vampires that she kills, she burns their bodies, they don't have bodies to go back to, so they're clinging to the nearest piece of dead flesh that they can. Human, vampire, doesn't matter. So, assumedly, hundreds or thousands of vampires she's killed in the last 200 years just spread out and start invading dead bodies and rising up. And people on the news are talking about a zombie apocalypse. Rick mentions it when Valerie and Damon come over. It's really interesting, just whoa, what a plot beat, what a direction to go.
It's weird how many of them managed to find vampire corpses to end up in, because I'm like, why would there just be all these vampire corpses?
Dead vampires just waiting around. Yeah, just haven't desiccated, haven't decomposed.
It's Jeremy in the spin-off series that never won.
You know what? Because they get all the way to... No, they get to Memphis, Tennessee. That's still south of Chicago. Because that's where he goes, right? I guess he doesn't necessarily have to be in Chicago. He could be anywhere. He just said he was going to Chicago.
He was lying about art school anyway, so...
Yeah, so he could be all over the country. Just, why would he just leave vampires lying around? Amateur. Imagine Rayna and Jeremy. That would be an interesting duo.
Brotherhood of the Fire. He's it's that thing she's dating her dad's successor. or working with her dad's successor. They can be platonic, work friends.
Yeah! Listen, because I'm Rayna, she's tried to romance before. I guess, he is human and he understands her credo. It might work out, but also it's I don't want to burden her with all that. Anyway, Rayna, because she's linked to all these vampires she's killed, she sees through all of their eyes the same way she was seeing through Stefan's eyes. But it's so many of them that it overwhelms her mind, and she's starting to she's seizing, she's speaking very staggeredly, she looks to be in some sort of mental anguish, and she is drawing furiously. She's writing down all the names of the people that she can see, because she knows all their names, of course. She knows everything about them because she was bound to them at some point.
Oh, also, I guess we should say, while this had been happening and what Enzo's motivation was when he was briefly working with Nora, was that Bonnie had been on these anti-witch pills because these never-seen witches working for the armory were after her, and taking the pills meant that locator spells wouldn't work on her. Little did she know she had been poisoning herself for several months. And now Enzo was like, oh no, you're dying. I need to save you because we're a couple. It's the whole thing. Bonnie and Enzo are a couple now, for those of you who didn't know that about season 7.
Off-screen couple development. Gotta love to see it. I think that's why this whole thing with the armory having witches pisses me off, because it's we never see these witches, and yet it pushes this really pivotal storyline that has happened off-screen in a time jump. There's so many layers to this stupid thing about Bonnie being depowered and now dying that is just we see none of it. We don't see the witches tracking her. We get little flashes of the armory coming after her now in retrospect, now that we're 3 years in the future. It's 2.5 years ago when the armory came to my dorm room at Whitmore College, and it's okay, how? The witches are tracking her. What witches?
And I'm sorry, Bonnie taking some random pills that Enzo gives her. I'm
why would she?
I do not believe, A, that in this universe, there is no way to block a witch's locator spell besides this.
The St. Mungo's Infirmary or whatever it's called. Why didn't they just take her there?
St. James'
Why didn't they
Infirmary.
just take her to St. Mungo's?
I guess she didn't want to go to New Orleans, or she didn't know about it. Maybe she wasn't on speaking terms with anyone who knew about it. But I'm just I can't speak to the originals because I'll have to go back and watch that.
This was the only option.
I don't believe there's no other way to block They've been so many locator spells in this show that haven't
The
always worked
Gemini
perfectly.
Coven.
Like, yeah, there must
Gemini
have been a
Coven
way.
cloak themselves all the time. It's like, you can ask Valerie or Nora. I guess Nora's dead now.
Yes.
But like, no, Nora dies after this happens. It's like, you couldn't find Nora and ask her to cloak you one time, so they can't find you. This is insane.
I guess Nora and Mary Lou had been captured by the armory as well. When does that even happen?
They had.
While they're on the run after Bo has just been killed by Rayna, they're in like a little tuck shop corner
Right.
store, and then Nora proposes to Mary Lou with the candy ring,
Aw.
and then the armory captures them right after that.
Homophobic. It's just like, all of this is just, how did they find the heretics? The heretics who are Gemini witches who can cloak themselves. It's all so vague and hazy and stupid. I don't think they ever even say that the armory has witches. They just say the armory will do a locator spell. And every time I'm like, you've not told me who's doing these locator spells. It's not Alex. She's not a witch. And everyone else at the armory is a male goon.
And Bonnie relying on Enzo. I'm like, Bonnie has a mother who is a vampire currently.
And is
but
alive.
who knows witch things. She was using witch herbs when she wasn't even practicing anymore. There was nothing Abby...
It's like, Abby can probably tell you how to hide yourself.
You know? And the idea that a woman like Bonnie in this dangerous world would give up this immense power she has just to hide from the armory.
It's like...
Go and get a favor from Klaus. Ask Klaus to kill them all. It's really...
That's what I'm saying. It's like we have so many people at our disposal. You're gonna take on Bonnie Bennett and think you can win? Why would Bonnie be afraid of them? She's so powerful. This whole storyline is so stupid. And it's like, it's cloaked in this 3-year time jump to be like, oh yeah, the army was after her and Enzo stepped up and he helped protect her. And it's like, why would Bonnie have accepted that? She didn't like Enzo. Like, they had a vibe for a second.
She has Caroline.
It's like, I just, it's all so weird. Anyway, it's not important. Why were we talking about this? The pills. That's why Enzo is... Yeah. So, Valerie's got Rayna at the moment because Rayna's struggling. Matt tells them to go to Rick's house to go hunker down. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, the episode 16, where they now are 3 years in the future and are flashing back, the episode's called Days of Future Past.
I did see that. I saw that and I was like, bold choice.
Interesting. Not at all what was happening in that story, but sure. I guess because you're in the future and you're in the past, it's like, it's kind of cute, but it's no time travel. There's no rewriting of reality.
Imagine Vampire Diaries introducing time travel. They wouldn't dare.
I'm sure they did in Legacies. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
You know, actually, I've seen clips of certain characters in Legacies who I know are dead by the end of Vampire Diaries in the originals, and I'm like, how are you? There's no other side. There's no ancestral plane.
So, like,
how
what
are
is
you
this about?
communicating with these people?
No idea. So, Valerie wants to know if Rayna can see Stefan, and she's like, it's all scattered, it's all jumbled up, it's a mess. And so Valerie starts doing the spell. She lights a candle. She scatters salt in like a circle. She asks Rick for a picture that Caroline probably kept of her and Stefan. Tells Rayna to focus on it, while she grabs Rayna's forehead and temples and, like, in what looks like a really painful magical gesture, tries to force her to focus in on Stefan. And so she sees where Stefan is, and Valerie relays the details of that to Damon, who then goes to try and find him. Damon at the time is dealing with a vampire spirit named Ambrose that got shot into Stefan's body. He's this serial killer from the late 19th century, who was a serial killer of fraternity and sorority kids. That was like a weird class-conscious like storyline going on in the middle of all of this.
He just seemed like a very, I don't know, like bitter at college. Like, you know, that like emo goth kid from like the 90s who'd be like, the preps.
Right, exactly.
And he was giving that sort of a vibe. And I was like, what are we doing
The rich
here?
kids who run everything. It's like, I don't super care. He murdered the whole fraternity, but all right. Kills everyone at that party. Long story short, Damon has to jump through hoops to actually get to him and disable him. They bring him back. Stefan has been shot into this alcoholic bus driver who was in a car crash and died. He just got shot into that guy's body. So there's a clock on his body because he's a vampire soul shot into a human body, like Florence in Joe's body, where at the beginning he can only last for a certain amount of time, which I think they say is 3 days.
Yeah.
On top of that, he is going through withdrawal because the guy's an alcoholic. On top of that, the region that they're in is experiencing a blizzard. So it is just a coalescing nightmare for Steph.
I mean, we know the devil exists in this universe in some aspect. If God exists, he hates Stefan Salvatore.
He hates Stefan Salvatore. He said, "You'll never have a good day in your life, my boy." I guess in that respect, Stefan is Jesus, right? Because it's like, you must suffer for everyone's sins. Not to put too grand a point on it, but
everyone being Damon.
True. Obviously, Paul Wesley playing this guy, like with Silas, like when he doesn't have his humanity on. It's always a nice opportunity to see Paul Wesley stretch his acting chops. He just always seems to have a lot more fun playing some of these other characters.
He was so good as Silas.
Yeah.
But Rayna, with that side plot, she specifically says, "Did you think I was hunting down like perfectly nice vampires and putting them in the Phoenix Stone? These are all horrible people.
The worst of the worst.
And I'm like, wonder why you never went after Klaus, because Klaus can't die, but I'm sure his soul could have been sucked into the Phoenix Stone.
She does mention that she went.
Well, I mean, Klaus mentions her, but it's like, you clearly never marked him or continued to pursue him.
Yeah, she mentions that she went after. Klaus mentions that some of his friends had dealt with her, so assumedly she did fight him and just couldn't beat him or something.
It just always bothers me that Klaus was such a difficult stalemate, can't beat him no matter how hard we try throughout seasons 3 and 4.
Sure.
And the only original vampire who like couldn't even be daggered. And like once he leaves the show and we move on to other plots, there's like so many different ways that he could have been stopped that suddenly become available, but he's no longer around, he's no longer relevant.
Yeah, but there's always the point that, like you say, right, with these magical objects and his biological nature, I guess, as the original hybrid, the silver daggers that work on all the originals don't work on him. So it's like maybe her Phoenix sword, where it pulls vampires into the stone because he's the original hybrid, because he's not fully a vampire, it simply just didn't work on him. And she just kind of cut her losses there. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised. Like, he just yanks it out of his chest the way he did when Rebecca woke up from her 1920s nap in season 3 and daggered him. He was like, "Don't pout. You knew it wouldn't kill me."
Right, exactly.
But the second point was, if all of these vampires are supposed to have been like horrible, awful people that she hunted down, but what about Florence, who was inside Joe's corpse? Like, was she also a horrible person? Because she seemed really sweet.
Oh, Florence, too good for this world. Maybe she just got caught in a crossfire. I don't. Maybe she was a Ripper. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Once she was inside the human body and her emotions weren't heightened and the bloodlust was gone, maybe she could see a bit more clearly.
Right, exactly. But yeah, they managed to get Stefan and this Ambrose vampire back in the same place, which is Rick's house. Valerie does this intense spell to put Stefan back in his own body. It nearly kills her, but Stefan is well and good. Damon then, after resolving the drama he has with Rick, because if you'll remember, Damon had put himself in a coffin 3 years ago and was going to stay in that coffin until Elena woke up. Rick is like, "I found a new life. I've got a fiance and kids. Don't come and mess up my life for me. Go find Bonnie in Memphis, Tennessee, or wherever she is. Maybe she's gonna be the one who will like take you back in and absolve you of your sins," which is an insane thing to say. Rick. I almost called him Rick Saltzman. What's his surname? Rick Saltzman.
Saltzman.
Insane choice. Damon goes to Bonnie to like apologize finally that he was gonna leave until Bonnie died, effectively, so Elena would come back and never see her again. I hadn't realized that that was the drama, and it's honestly crazy she ever forgives him, because it's like, wow, screw you guys, shows how much I matter to you. He was like, "I'm gonna sleep and desiccate in a coffin until you are dead, so the person I actually care about is alive, and then we can continue our lives." Crazy. Best friends, Bayman.
I hated that throughout that arc. It's like she keeps saying, my best friend, talking about Damon. And I'm like, look, I'm not a child anymore. I know you can have more than one best friend. But ew, Bonnie, you have Caroline.
But how do you put this man over Caroline, over Elena? It's like, this is the guy?
I guess at that point, she's like, I'll never see Elena again.
Right,
but
that's true. But it's like, this is also what pisses me off. None of this matters to Rayna. But it's like, I always talk about the fact that the Bonnie-Stefan connection gets lost in the dust when we start pushing these two. And it's like, this is the friendship that we left behind that connection for? Because Bonnie and Stefan were actual friends. He even had a connection with their family. It's like, this is the friendship I think would make the most sense. No, we need Bonnie and Damon together. And then it's like Damon just absolutely treats her like dirt the whole time. And she loves him. Hate it. Hate it.
At least they didn't end up love interests like in the book. I think that would have, in as much as that probably would have been the way to bring back Stelena, I would have hated it. I would have been like, I won, but at what cost?
I would take a fling in which she realizes, oh, you suck, and then she kicks him to the curb. Like, every positive eventuality of their interaction must end in Bonnie realizing Damon sucks beyond measure, and that she needs to just cut him out. She's not Stefan. She's not bound by blood.
Frankly, if they wanted Damon to have this deep, meaningful friendship aside from Alaric, I'm like, Enzo would have been the character. Lord knows it would have given Enzo something to do.
They refuse for Damon to have any scenes with Enzo, his actual friend. It's so crazy.
Damon treats Enzo like, his ex-boyfriend who won't catch a hint and go away.
Oh.
Like, why are you still hanging around me and my friend group? I don't want you anymore.
So, they've just discovered the fact that, like, because Rayna is immune to magic and these pills are made from her blood, they shield a witch from locator spells, but also take away a witch's magic. But also, if you take them for long enough, they kill you. So, it's just real interesting properties of this drug. Damon shows up. He's here to apologize with flowers. She slams the door in his face, but they do end up moving as a trio to, I guess, figure out how to keep Bonnie from dying. Rayna, on the other hand, posts this situation with Stefan. I guess Damon goes back to Rick's house to go and, like, get Rayna, and she easily overpowers him. Rick moves for a dart gun that's, like, hidden in, like, a suitcase or something, but doesn't really move for it because he's not invested. And she escapes. And she gets an Uber or a taxi, and this guy is talking her ear off, and she's just like looking out the window, dealing with these visions that are still plaguing her. The car comes upon this blockade of cones in the middle of the road, and Rayna tells this guy, no, don't stop, because she immediately clocks that someone's trying to grab her. He stops because he's a law-abiding citizen, and Enzo shows up, compels him to stay there, and then shoots Rayna with some tranquilizer
this
darts.
Never-ending,
puts her in his own car.
Never-ending parade of anesthetics that they just have.
It's there that he asks her if there's a way to undo the effects of her blood. And she says, no, the only thing you can do is enhance them. And he says, how do you know? He's like, he stops to point a gun at her or something. And she's like, I was locked up by the armory where you put me for 3 years. I watched as the armory experimented with my blood to make these pills. I know how it works. Enzo's like heaving, like tears in his eyes, like looking at the end of his rope. And she's like, wonder why you're so emotional about this. I wonder if you might have given these pills to, say, a witch that you care about, like Bonnie Bennett, and inadvertently given her a death sentence. That's very interesting.
She's so much fun when she's like this.
He still holds on to her, though, and puts her in this storm cellar of wherever it is they are. I guess this house that him and Bonnie have been living in. They have that cabin in the woods that they just live in now.
With Enzo's
I guess because
guitar.
they were in hiding. Yeah! Enzo's teaching how to play guitar. This is where he reads to her the Odyssey, and it's like, okay, whose house is this? Maybe it's during this armory time that Enzo became suddenly like this well-read guy, you know? Good for him, I guess. Damon eventually reunites with them, and they formulate this plan. They say, Rayna, you've got this one last life. You've got this everlasting that you're linked to. We want to transfer that to Bonnie. We're hoping that that'll give her an extra lifetime, and so even though this poison is killing her, she'll just be fine. I can't remember if it was a situation where she would die and then resurrect one time with this everlasting life essence, or if it would just replace her existing lifetime with this lifetime that Rayna had left. I don't fully remember the mechanics of that.
Oh, the former actually makes... No, wait, was it the latter? I think the latter might make more sense, but I don't know if that's what they said.
Where it's like we transfer the life essence and it replaces Bonnie's current one.
Oh, was that the latter? Then I meant the
The
former.
first one is Bonnie will die of the poison.
Yeah, she'll die of the poison and the everlasting will bring her back. But I don't think that's what they said. I'm just saying that would have made more sense.
Yeah, because I don't remember Barney like immolating and like resurrecting. I think that would have stuck in my head. Well, maybe not. I don't know. Rayna's like, why on earth would I agree to that? And Enzo, deciding to be good cop for the situation, goes, you know, you've been doing this thing a long time. I imagine you're just like very exhausted by this job. All you do is hunt vampires, and now they've all been scattered. Like, let us take this burden off of you. Let us be your hit squad to knock them out. And she's like, you know what? I am tired. I've been doing this shit so long. I don't get to live. Like, I just want one day where I can feel the sun on my face. I can eat a cheeseburger. I can sit by the beach and just exist.
I like that Rayna is a character who, unlike Elena, who's just like, oh, being human, even though everyone tries to kill me every season, being human is so important to me because I want to have babies one day and I want to get to be old and geriatric while my boyfriends stay eternally youthful forever. I like that Rayna comes with a real reason as to why she's like, I don't get why anyone would want to be a vampire. And the way she explains it from her point of view, it makes sense. She's like, I've lost my family and my friends. I've been burdened with this mission that I can't be free from. I can't even just die when I fail and be free because I just come back and I start all over again. And I'm like, yeah, the way that you explain it, I can see why you don't value immortality. Unlike other characters in this universe who've been like, no, being human to me is so important as I bleed out on the floor and my vampire friends need to save me every week.
So they make a deal. Rayna says, I'll put you through this trial period. You can prove to me that you will be an effective hit squad. Because these are like the worst of the worst vampires. So take out this list of people and then I'll make the deal with you. And Rayna gives them a list to go off of and they head out. And we get this montage of them going city to city, slaughtering vampires.
Scores.
It's going far slower than they were hoping for because some of these vampires are really tough to kill. The whole time, Rayna is just producing more and more names. I think at the end of that episode, when they've done their list, at this point, Barney has just like gone home to go be where Rayna is at the cabin, while Enzo and Damon carry out the hit list. And Barney calls them and is like, the list just got a little bit longer. And they pan out on the room and the walls and the floor and every surface are all covered with pages that are scribbled with names and details of all these vampires. It's just 100-fold all of a sudden, all these names. In the next episode, Barney, the pills effects start to wear off from her because she stopped taking them when they realized that they were poisoning her and they were killing her so she can have as much life as she can left. But because the effects of them wearing off means the armory will be able to locate her, she asked Rayna for a syringe of her blood, essentially. And Rayna's like, this will be poisoning yourself. You know that, right? And Bonnie's like, I just need to buy them as much time as I can. She shoots herself up with Rayna's blood, and Rayna says, this will give you 24 hours at most, and I don't know how many 24 hours you have left in you, so we can't keep doing this. At that point, Bonnie then calls Enzo and is like, listen, y'all are mowing through vampires as fast as you can, but it's not fast enough, and I'm like about to die. And I'd rather spend this last time I have left with you rather than you being over there knocking out vampires and me just dying by myself and saying goodbye on the phone. So Enzo's torn now between like wanting to get the job done and wanting to be with Bonnie in her final moments.
Yay for Benzo.
Hey, listen, it is kind of sweet.
I'd rather spend my final moments with Elena's Sleeping Beauty form than with Enzo. I'd rather phone Jeremy wherever he is and be like, hey, Jer.
Hey, Jer.
You up?
You want to hang out? You want to get coffee? What's going on?
You still chopping wood for fun?
Damon calls in the armory because they're like, we're not going to get this done in time. And so they call in the armory and the goon squad comes in. They have to make a deal with Alex, essentially.
Who is around? Alex is around a lot more than I would have expected from someone who I don't remember.
Yeah, Alex just keeps showing up. And you really don't know until this last episode. It's not the last episode of the season, but it's the second last episode in which you see Alex, and it's the last episode you see Rayna. So it's like, not until now do you find out what Alex even wants. But Damon essentially calls Alex, I guess, and is like, we need use of your armory goons. And Alex is like, why would I give you that? And he's like, because if you do, I'll deliver you Bonnie Bennett just like you want. Because Damon's whole thing is like, well, if I save you, but you're in a worse situation in your living life, then at least you're alive, and I'm a hero. So
I guess Damon's logic was that it was explained to him what the armory wants, and he's like, oh, well, fine, Bonnie, just go open their stupid little trap door for them, and then they'll let you go. It's yet another Bennett witch seal that exists in this universe. The Bennett family makes all the magical locks in this world.
Bonnie has spoken to Virginia St. John in that mental hospital and found out that this is not something you should let out. That, like, Virginia was willing to seal her own sister in that vault to not let whatever it was out. This is something that drove her great-grandfather, Enzo's father, mad, the founder of this place. And he, like, slaughtered everyone who worked for the armory at the time with a smile on his face. So it's like, clearly this is something we should not let out.
Damon, despite having, tangled with the Tomb Vampires in season 1, and the originals in seasons 2 and 3, and Silas in season 4, and Malachi Parker, is like, it's fine.
There's so many trapped.
I'm willing to let out another dangerous thing because I refuse to believe that it's that dangerous. We're just going to get what we want out of this situation, and whatever happens after that, it'll be fine.
So the armory, there's this like cut together montage of the armory chasing down vampires and just like tearing them down, just destroying them. I think there's a scene where Rick and Caroline have been roped in to help like with the hit squad. It's Damon, Enzo, Stefan, Rick, Caroline, potentially Valerie. No, Valerie's gone at this point. She and Stefan have broken up. Well, is it a breakup if you weren't like together?
They were he was kind of rebounding on her. She was
for sure
feeling like they were together. I'm just happy she made it out alive.
Listen, only heretic to make it out alive, and good for her. Live your best life, girl. Wonder where you are now, because you're presumably still alive.
We hope.
We
hope.
The
number of characters who die off screen in this show after leaving.
That's true.
Lucy Bennett, Kelly Donovan.
Lucy Bennett, who was forced by Virginia St. John to close this vault. Then when does she die? Who kills her?
I think Virginia killed her.
How did Virginia get a leg up on Lucy Bennett, accomplished witch?
I have no idea.
God, they just say things in this season, honestly, because they were like, Virginia forced Lucy to seal this thing. Where did she find Lucy? How did she force her? Lucy's a witch. What are we talking about here? I guess the armory did a locator spell.
Maybe she asked Lucy to seal it, and then she killed her afterwards to make sure she couldn't open it. I will say, though, I had completely forgotten that plot point. I truly just believe that in season 8, suddenly Lucy is established as dead, and when Bonnie has that final scene with all her ancestors and relatives ghosts, Lucy's just there, and I'm like, oh, I guess she's dead.
I guess she's dead.
I completely missed that they had established her as dead a whole season before.
It's still not great. But yeah, the armory mows down every single vampire that's left on the hit list, and Damon delivers Bonnie to the armory. Rayna Damon just finds a shaman, which was like, what is this about?
He conjures a shaman out of
From
nowhere.
thin
A
air.
shaman who specifically seems to understand who and what Rayna is.
1. 2, knows the magic that must be done to transfer the spell. It's like, what are the chances of this? How does Damon know someone from that specific tribe and has had the tradition passed down? Even if it's like the armory is the one who found the shaman and Damon is just doing his typical thing where he acts like he runs the show. It's like, how did the armory find the shaman?
I guess the armory had like a whole room dedicated to Rayna and her backstory.
So they just did research and they were like, we tracked down the bloodlines.
They plucked it from their citation list and they were like, oh, call this guy up.
Yeah, I believe it, I guess, of the armory. They just really make it seem like Damon just found a shaman, and it's like, how and where? But okay. The shaman is here. He's ready to make good on Rayna's deal because all the vampires on her list have been taken out. She sits there willingly as the shaman transfers the magic of the everlasting to Bonnie, and he starts to recite the ritual the same way the shaman did nearly 200 years ago. And he says, Great Spirit, we ask you to see this woman who has carried out her cause, and now we ask that you let her rest, pass on her burden to another, so that she may make sure the mission is carried out. And Damon's like, what? And Rayna's like, you didn't think I was just gonna let y'all all go free? Let's not be crazy. I don't know if you seem to forget, I hated vampires before I was made a huntress, my guy. You all still need to go. And now, Bonnie's gonna be the one to do it.
The wild thing is, Rayna says to Damon, did you think that I was gonna let you go after what you did to me? And I was like, wait, so this is specifically about you hating Damon? Damon, why is it always you?
It's always Damon. It's always Damon.
Me in my McGonagall era. How come whenever there's a problem, it's always you?
But as they transfer this everlasting to Bonnie, they transfer all the attributes of the huntress from Rayna to Bonnie.
She stabs herself with the same ritual knife,
with the ritual knife. And Rayna dies her final death. And that's the last we see of Rayna Cruz. The next episode is Bonnie dealing with the huntress situation. She ends up chasing... Is she chasing Damon or is she chasing Stefan again? I can't remember. It has to be Damon because thematically that's the only thing that makes sense because of her hatred of Damon.
Yeah.
She marks somebody and then uses her huntress abilities to like track them down and is like... She does the same thing Rayna was doing for Stefan of like, you're moving too slow. You're making stupid decisions. Turn the other way, not this way. I'm catching up to you. She starts ending up in that same pattern. And I thought that was fun, but I was like, not super relevant to Rayna, who has passed on to the sweet hereafter and hopefully found peace, reunited. She says before she goes, she wants to see her father again.
Yes.
Oh, that was the one where I was like, girl, you got a rough deal.
She also says she wants to know love, and I'm like, in the afterlife? I mean, maybe.
Plenty of
Why
fish
not?
in heaven.
It looked like Tyler and Vicky were walking off together at the end of season 8, so who knows?
Yeah, no. You could reunite with that Mr. Hunter because, well, I mean, unless he went to Kate's hell, who knows? But like, maybe he found peace and you can find him in heaven.
Kate's selection process doesn't work like that. He's like, Hunter who? No. Hell is for deadbeat moms like Kelly Donovan, victims like Vicky Donovan, awful people like Catherine and Silas.
Not this rando, though. He doesn't matter. But yeah, that's really all there is to Rayna Cruz. It's not a lot. I just found her... Listen, I'm the patron saint of obscure characters and of shitting on fan favorites. So... You had to expect this from me. I just really wanted to take a look once more because season 7 was a blind spot. I watched it once and then never again. And I really want to go back and be like, what was going on with her? All the parallels with the Brotherhood of the Five, the sense of her as a person and how that gets lost within the Huntress, and how in that middle arc when she bonds with Stefan, you get to see a lot more of her as a person. And in that last arc when she's plagued by the visions of all the dead vampires, and you get a sense of this exhausted old hunter who just wants to find peace and rest. It's just all very like interesting facets of this character who's not huge. She's a primary antagonist for this season, but of the antagonists in the Vampire Diaries, she's probably the one you'd bring up last, you know?
Yeah.
Like, even the devil who comes after her by virtue of being the devil,
devil.
probably comes before Rayna Cruz.
She's certainly more interesting than Marcos.
You know what? I take it back. I would put her above Marcos in levels of importance.
I mean, Marcos does important things. He's just not a very...
He's not memorable.
Interesting character. He's down there with Dr. Maxfield, Westfield, whatever his name
West
is.
Max West. No, wait, West Maxfield.
West
no, you had it right the first time. Max Westfield would still work is the thing.
The underwhelming trilogy of Wes Maxfield, Julian, and Marcos.
Oh, so bad. So immemorable. Julian lasts a lot longer, so that's why it's like, yeah, you remember Julian with the whole heretic situation. And Rayna, it's like, she's so intrinsically tied to the time jump, the fact that people are like on the run all the time in season 7. There's this huntress that's constantly hunting them down. That's at the very least how you remember her for that season. But it's like Marcos shows up one episode, dies 2 later, and it's like, all right.
He was gorgeous, though. Great gowns, beautiful gowns.
Showed up, served face, died. Well done, I guess.
I liked that Rayna's ending as a huntress mirrored her beginning as a huntress, supernatural huntress, where, you know, in the beginning she's in this ritual and she's like, oh yeah, they're gonna make me a supernatural hunter a la one of the five. And then it's like, she hears what the shaman is saying. She's like, wait, what? What are you saying? Wait, I didn't sign up with, I didn't read the fine print. Wait, what? And then her ending is Damon getting that life transferred to Bonnie. And then he hears what the shaman is saying. He's like, wait, what? This isn't what I wanted.
Double it and pass it to the next one. Good for you, girlie. Let the Mystic Falls gang deal with it. Lord knows they deserve it. But yeah, Leslie Ann Huff Penaligan, that's her full name. She was Leslie Ann Huff at the time of the show. She's credited as such. And then she got married and she's got not a double barrel surname. She just has both surnames at the end.
Oh.
I've seen that in Marvel Comics where it's like sometimes Susan Storm Richards or like Mary Jane Watson Parker, but there's no hyphen. And I'm like, oh, I guess. I do know that in Portuguese culture can compound family names onto each other from both the mother's side and the father's side without using any hyphens. It's actually pretty cool the way that it works. It's a long, complicated rule that I won't get into, but it's something that I happen to know.
Yeah, I guess maybe it might be, I mean, not Portuguese. It was obviously like Spanish colonialism in the Philippines. I think her husband is also Filipino, so that might be a Filipino rule as well, where it's like, yeah, you just have both surnames side by side. Isn't it also, it's also a Mexican situation, right? It's like you take the surname of one of your parents and that becomes your middle name, and then the family name becomes your surname. I can't remember how exactly it works.
Oh.
But there's like a naming convention where you end up with 3 names. I'll have to go back and find out. I don't know. But she's been in a couple stuff. It's like she'll do like an episode or a few episodes in like your usual series. She came up in like the Disney circuit, apparently.
Really?
Yes, Sweet Life on Deck, Sunny with a Chance, Pair of Kings.
What?
All like single episodes, but she's been in all those shows.
I feel crazy.
Yeah, none of these characters are anyone I remember, but yeah. Funny enough, her Sweet Life on Deck character is called Rayna.
Foreshadowing?
It's spelled differently, but yeah, foreshadowing. It's like, for her, it's a Spanish name. It makes sense. It's an Iberian name, I think, which it's tied to like Regency. You can tell from the name Rayna. So,
speaking of foreshadowing, this whole season dealing with the Hellstone and, you know, paying for your sins. Big foreshadowing for season 8. Kind of disappointing that when we get to see the actual canonical hell in this universe, it's less interesting than the Phoenix Stone.
Yeah, honestly, the Phoenix Stone does a far better job. Season 8 hell feels like a pale redo.
Yeah.
Like, everything that happens in season 8 is just a less good retread of the season 7 stuff, because, like I said earlier, season 7, so much of it is just Damon's self-indulgent spiral of like, oh me, oh my, I hurt all my friends, I deserve to die, or I should put myself in a coffin so I don't hurt anyone. Anything to avoid facing up to any actual like accountability or actually trying to solve the problem. Just run away from it all. But like, this season is very concerned with both Stefan and Damon reckoning with not just their bond, but what harm they cause because of this bond and what sins that are attached to them. And it's like, when you get to season 8, it's like, we've done all this before and it was far more interesting. All the stuff of like their psychic hells and us watching what they went through in the Hellstone is far more interesting than Cade coming in, walking in with a suit and just telling them by voice, here's why you deserve to go to hell. It's just not as cool.
Flashing that beautiful, dare I say, devilish smile of his.
It's like, that's great and all, but your 1,000 pearls aren't gonna help that the story's doo-doo. I can't do anything about that.
I wonder, just random thoughts as we reach our denouement. I wonder if Rayna's drive as a huntress, like I said, seemed much stronger, like everything else about her, than the Brotherhood of the Five.
Yeah.
I wonder if a certain Professor Atticus Shane would have been able to help her with his hypnotherapy the way he helped Jeremy.
Because it's not magic, right? So it's like, it would have an effect on her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think she would have been able to stand Atticus Shane. She would have found him shady and smarmy. She'd be like, I don't like your vibe, and just leave. She's not as young as Bonnie is. She wouldn't have been so enamored. She would have immediately clocked his vibe and been like, Whatever's happening here, I don't want none of it.
Yeah.
Although, I'm curious if she would view the way the Brotherhood of the Five were like, yeah, we want to disroll vampires, but also Silas? It's like, would she have felt any compulsion to take care of Silas as an immortal?
Oh.
Or just vampires?
Possibly. I mean, the Phoenix Stone probably wouldn't have worked on him either if we don't think it would work on Klaus.
Yeah, that's true. God, interesting questions that there's no reason for them to ever have been answered, but, you know, we like to wonder.
We can wonder.
Yeah, I guess that's all that is to be said about Rayna Cruz, which means we're at the end of our episode. Thank you for listening. If you've stuck around for this one, I'm sure not a character everyone knows or cares about, but, you know, I like her. If you have any questions, queries, or thoughts, or just want to say hi, you can mail us at animalattackpod@gmail.com. You can also tweet us at animattackpod on Twitter. That's at ANIM Attack Pod. You'll find a link tree in our bio there that'll take you to all our online stuff. And if you're listening to us on a podcast platform, why don't you shoot us a rating? That's supposed to be super helpful. I don't fully understand the mechanics of it, and I need to look it up. But just pop us a 5-star. If you can give us a review, because we want to know how people are enjoying this. We need to get some feedback that's not from our friends in real life who already listen to this show because they love us. But yeah, we hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.
Bye.